We'll call the meeting to order. Welcome to the regular meeting, Board of Directors of that Irrigation District.
Can you hear my phone?
Yes, I will. Now can you hear me? Should I start over?
I think we're good.
Okay. Regular board meeting, that Irrigation District, March 9th, 2022. Would you all stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Secretary, will you call the roll, please?
Yes. Division 1?
Here?
Division 2?
Here.
Division 3?
Here.
Division 4?
Here.
Division 5?
Here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Secretary. At this time, we'll take a public comment on items not on today's agenda. If you'd like to speak to any item pertinent to NID, now's your chance. And I see Michael Hillwell. Go ahead.
Good morning. I would just like to commend Director Hecht on setting the bar on ethical behavior relating to a potential conflict of interest. The way she approached the issue of the NID response concerning the Brunswick mine, I thought provides an example for elected officials throughout the area on how to proceed to seek both in-house and other counsel and to respond ethically. So thank you very much, Director Hecht.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. Anyone else like to speak to any item not on today's agenda? Star 9 your phone at this time. Last chance, if you'd like to speak today, star 9 your phone. All right, we will move on to the consent agenda.
President, I'd like to pull items 2, 3, and, well, I'd like to pull them off, please.
If you'd like to
Just for
pull
brief talk, just for brief.
Okay. Then we'll start with number 1.
Okay, on number 1, I'm fine with the minutes. I'd like to, I had a topic on the minutes, with summary minutes. On the minutes, we always mention what the public comments were, but these are board meetings, and it seems like in the summary minutes, we should capture at least some context of board discussion. And so I'm just, I want to approve these minutes. I don't have a problem with these minutes, but I wanted to take the opportunity to put that out there, that I think that we should, the summary minutes should at least capture some of the board conversation in the summary minutes. I think this is going to be coming back up to the board. So that one's fine. I'm fine with numbers.
So just to provide a little context, as we've discussed before, typically in summary minutes, it is standard for only board comments that are reached by consensus to be summarized in the minutes. So the board does speak as a unified voice through reaching consensus or by vote. And so that's usually what occurs in the summary minutes. It wouldn't be a counting of every comment, for example, that Director Hull made.
Right, no, I concur. I completely agree. But if there was some discussion and we come to some, some agreement on something that this was the basis of our vote or something, it seems like that should be in there.
Those are informational items.
Oh, I know, I mean, just in general. I'm talking in general. So I'm fine with these minutes. I'd like to move the real particular minutes. So that was just my comment on item 1.
Well, I just would comment, I think there was an interesting example of what Jennifer was saying when we had, oh yes, the wonderful motion on follow-up on the mine discussion.
Yes.
So that was, I mean, we had a very detailed summary of that, which was board consensus. So anyway, I'm just saying that I do think it's operationalized, but it might be that when you see specific examples of where we may have missed it, that would be good to talk about.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that sounds good. I just wanted to bring that up. I thought since I was going to follow along. And then on the second one, the ABC.
Well, we have to vote.
We have to vote on
So
each
you
one
move?
separately
I
because
move that we move
I second public comment.
No, that's right.
We've been this so long.
Okay, so did you make a motion?
I made a motion, we
Okay, so I need a second, please.
You got it.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? Madam Secretary, let's see, public comment, yes. Any public comment on this item, approving the minutes of the regular meeting, February 23rd? Okay, now, Madam Secretary, you call the roll, please.
Yes. Division 4,
Aye.
Division 1,
Yes.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 2.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, now number 2.
Okay, on the AB 361 compliance, the staff memo notes, or the resolution notes that, the board is gonna, adopting the resolution does not prohibit the public from attending meetings in person. Public attendance will be determined by the board based on current conditions and health and safety consideration.
Which we're in.
This is item 2 out of the staff report, the second paragraph of the background. And so this was consent, but in February, the governor withdrew 95% of the emergency declaration, and now the only emergency declaration pertains to hospitals and nursing facilities and that kind of thing. And Nevada County opened up their meetings, the Board of Supervisors opened up their meetings to public, allowing the public in the room on February 22nd. And so I'd like to make a motion that going forward, we should open up our room to the public.
It's not really appropriate to make an emotion on the consent item, but I was actually going to bring it up during the general manager's report. President Beerwag and I have been discussing this issue, and we've been looking to open up the room for regular board meetings at the next meeting as well. We need to have a little bit further discussion, and we can do it later, regarding the plan for water, just because of the number of attendees and the size of the room. So that might be the only challenge.
Yes, so we have been talking about it.
Okay, good. Yeah, 'cause I think a lot of people are comfortable attending by Zoom. I don't think we will have as many people in the room, but I think it's time, and it's noted it, and in the resolution, it notes that we had to do this every month, but it says for subdivision E of 54953. But subdivision E of 54953 states that that this section shall become operative January 1st, 2024. And so there's no E3 anymore, there's no,
The resolution that's been adopted is essentially allowing, for example, for Director Heck to participate remotely. If that resolution was not adopted, any board member desiring to take a vote on an item or participate in the meeting would either have to be present, or they would have to publicly notice the place in which they are remotely participating from. Yeah, and then allow the public to attend at that meeting. There is some fairly significant legislation working through the state right now regarding that particular portion of the Brown Act to not require the public noticing of the remote locations. But as I previously stated, President Beerwag and I have already had discussions about opening the room at the next meeting. And as well, we'll have a further discussion regarding how to handle the plan for water just to the sheer number of people.
okay, all right, but there's no paragraph 2 of subdivision E anymore. So, okay, so I'm fine with that. I just wanted to bring that up. So I move that we adopt resolution. Well,
Consent agenda item number 2.
it's consent agenda item number 2. But the resolution, it says paragraph 2 of subdivision E, but there is no paragraph 2 of subdivision E anymore. It's changed. Anyway, so I guess that's okay. Anyway, I guess.
Well, you can move and strike that provision, right?
I'm still looking for where you're at. You're
Okay, so the
whereas.
second to the last whereas second to the last whereas before the now therefores, it says, whereas, it's a long paragraph.
Okay, I'm with you.
Whereas, as a consequence of the state of emergency and recommended social distancing measures, the Board of Directors does hereby find that legislative bodies of NID shall continue to conduct their meetings without compliance to paragraph 3, as authorized for subdivision E, and that such legislative bodies shall comply with the requirements to provide the public with access to the meeting as prescribed in paragraph 2 of subdivision E. But there is no paragraph 2 of subdivision E of code section, government code section 5.
The whereases are, you know, they're not the legally binding part of the resolution, it is the now therefore. I wouldn't get too wrapped around that, we can look into it for
Yeah.
future.
Okay,
And remember, this is a reauthorization of a resolution you've now adopted a number of times.
right,
So
right.
it may have dropped out, I don't know. We'll
We'd have to
into
look.
it, but-
Yeah, and only 5% of the proclamation. Okay, well, I'll move to adopt, consent item.
I second.
Any public comment this morning on this item? Item number 2, AB 361 compliance, start at. Start on your phone. All right, seeing none, Madam Secretary, will you call the roll, please?
Division 4,
Aye.
Division 1,
Aye.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 2.
Aye. Thank you.
Okay, number 3, this is a quick one, and I'm on this, quitclaim deed, it's down in my division, it's on, Virginia Town Road, and it's putting it in a pipe on the road, which makes perfect sense. But my question is, there is an existing pipeline that looks like it goes to a private line, that Chip, is that a private line that goes to a house, or the deed looks like it says it goes to a house, 1943 document.
Okay, I'm sorry, so, you're talking about the map, you're looking at the map?
I was looking at, yes, the map.
Okay, so you've got
The old map on the back?
I'm looking at both maps. So the map that was prepared by, D. Hunt,
Yes.
okay? That map shows the proposed 18-inch pipeline, and then there's a blue, like railroad tie looking thing.
Yeah, so that's the existing canal. So when this first subdivision that you see to the right of that, or just above that section of pipe, that blue section of pipe, all those streets and subdivision, the
Mhm.
canal actually used to go through a portion of that. So that was realigned and put into a pipe when they built that first subdivision section. So this proposed 18-inch pipe ties into that existing 18-inch pipe on Virginia Town, which is actually an NID-owned pipe.
That is an NID on pipe. And does it end right there where it shows that it ends?
Yeah, as soon as it crosses the road, it dumps into a spot with, I think there's 4 or 5 boxes where customers pull water off.
And that's the end of the line? And then this spill, so now the spill is being put into the storm drain as well? It noted in the progress report?
Correct. Yep, the spill is going into the storm drain, which then, it doesn't show on this map, but it crosses Virginia Town just a little bit to the right of that tie-in with the existing pipe. And then goes across, and then eventually dumps into Auburn.
Oh, so does it go overland? Because right now there's a big riparian area where that spill is.
Just like it used to spill before with the other section that used to spill through that same area, it spills through the same spot.
So that riparian area is gonna stay there going down to the ravine?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Okay, thank you. We adopt, an item 3.
Second.
Any public comment on this item? Ready for the board discussion on this item? Any public comment, start on your phone? All right, Madam Secretary, will you call the roll, please?
Division 4? Aye. Division 1,
Yes.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 2.
All right. 4.
Okay, number 4, on page, 21 of the warrant, it notes that we paid PG&E $72,300 for a water purchase. And I was wondering so have we already started purchasing water this year?
No, that is the billing for any purchase of PG&E water is actually lagging because it takes time to calculate all of the flows through the system. And then NID and PG&E coordinate the calls and determine how much, make sure we agree upon the volumes and amounts, and then they send us a bill. So that, what you're seeing there is for last year, and it's not the final bill yet. We will still receive one more for the water we purchased in 2021. And we do plan on purchasing in 2022, although as of right now, we haven't begun those purchases.
Okay, that confirms that. And, but that brings a point, these bills that don't come until several months into the next year, I think, doesn't that confound our finances to where?
And it depends on when the bill, so say that action was taken, in period 11 of the prior fiscal year, but we don't receive the bill till period 2 of the new fiscal year, we'll accrue those funds backwards. It just kind of depends on, with some PG&E bills, not necessarily this particular bill, because it is more unique in that it's more of a one-time purchase, that is something we would technically accrue back. With ongoing utility bills, you can either accrue them backwards, or it kind of comes out in the wash because it's a rolling 12, 13 period fiscal year. So it just depends on what it is.
Because on page 7, there's a Kavanaugh and Associates charge, and it's $13,500 for 2020 water audit.
So,
Well,
That's a really old, and I'm just, did we do a water audit in 2020? And
We have done a water, yes, we're required to do a water audit every year. And then, what happened is the state changed the guidance for how large a system is required to do a water audit. So we had to go back and do some of our smaller systems and catch them up to speed.
Okay.
And so that's why although it looks like we did the work in 2020, that's not the case. We actually did the work now for the information from 2020.
Aha.
Changing regulations.
Okay, so we're not paying bills like 2 years later?
No.
Is there anything we can do to make them so they have to pay submit invoices in a timely manner? Or
but that wasn't the problem.
that wasn't the issue.
that wasn't a problem in this one?
Yeah, there is contract language within our standard contracts and the timing in which to submit invoices. It is typical for all public agencies to, once in a while, have to pay an old invoice.
Okay. And they're less and less, so that's good.
Well, since we're buying PG&E water now every year, budgeting for that, we're gonna have just a kind of a rolling thing, just like utility bill.
We'll have to figure out from an accounting perspective the best way to deal with that, but yes, technically, it could be a rolling bill, that we don't go through a large accrual calculation process.
Good. Okay, well, thank you very much, Chip. And Doug, thanks for the previous one. I motion to approve item 4.
Second.
Any further board discussion? Any member of the public like to comment on this item, the warrants? Today, star 9 your phone. All right, Madam Secretary, will you call the roll, please?
Division 4?
Aye.
Division 1?
Aye.
Division 5?
Yes.
Division 3?
Aye.
Division 2?
Aye. Okay, thank you. General order, item number 5.
Right,
Good morning, Ken. How are you?
good morning, I'm doing well, how about yourself?
Good.
Good morning, I'm Kean Summers, Hydroelectric Manager. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about the South Yuba Canal and the plans to integrate it into our system. As you'll recall, on February 9th, we had a workshop to discuss this issue, and at that time I said we didn't necessarily have all the answers, but we'd be back with more information and more details. Today is that day. On February 9th, we talked through that we were going to need to do some job description changes. We talked about some staffing changes and changes to the number of full-time equivalents of the district. We talked about the changes to both the operating and capital budget and the power purchase agreement. So we're going to follow that same sort of walk through this presentation here. And so with that, I will go ahead and get started.
We're going to do that all in one resolution, right?
All in one resolution. Whoever gets to make this recommendation has a bit of a mouthful. So, all right. So let's start with some job description changes. And before we dive into these, we are going to ask to bring the Administrative Analyst 1/2 back to a future board meeting to make some changes to it. We've got a couple of comments along the way that we think will approve that. So today's action will ask that you modify the resolution to remove that one, and then look for it to come at a future board meeting with some minor changes to it.
Yeah, Director Hull had some great comments regarding better differentiating between the 1 and the 2, as well as the admin analyst position and the current management assistant, the MAs. So we took a look at it and do see the benefit of making those modifications. So we're going to remove that item from consideration today, and then we'll just bring it back.
All right, but the other job descriptions we are gonna ask for approval of, and that is the senior administrative analyst, the supervising mechanical civil foreman, the maintenance compliance specialist, the supervising operator, and then the compliance and protection system specialist. I note here, but this approving the job descriptions here does not fill them. That we'll deal with that on the next slide a little bit.
And would you mind, informing the board and the public that this isn't just, these aren't just for the South Yuba Canal, but the hydro project in general?
That's correct.
Because hydro is gonna oversee it.
Yeah, the way that we deal with our staffing is people aren't assigned to a facility. We move our forces as necessary throughout the system. And as the weather allows, we tend to work in the upper division during the summer and then lower down on the mountain during the winter. So all of these positions will be staffed throughout the project.
And then it should also be noted that some of the recommendations for new positions today, they are also related to addressing a structural deficiency within the current organizational structure of hydropower, and that they have kind of the working staff that goes out and actually does the task, and then they kind of have a management level, but they're missing that supervisory level in the middle. And so we're trying to also address that just to provide better field supervision, which is needed specifically when you're doing some more of these complex tasks that they do in hydropower. And then I wanted to note one other thing. Based off of any input we received today and the board's action, we would then be subsequently at the next board meeting bringing back the revised salary schedule. So for CalPERS, you have to adopt your entire salary schedule at once. And so anytime you do major modifications, we adopt a brand new salary schedule, so that would come back at the next board meeting.
And you mentioned that these salary schedules were in these duty statements or job descriptions, but I don't see the salary schedules in these job descriptions.
So the schedule isn't, but the placement on the schedule is. So you can see that with each one of the job descriptions, it says in the corner, the salary and range, so it's a C33 or.
And how does that correlate to the salary schedule?
Okay.
So each in the salary schedule is assigned a salary range. This tells you what range that they're assigned to.
Okay.
And so that will be coming back at a future board meeting.
How did you decide which range it went into?
Based off some of the market work we previously did, addressing some compaction issues and looking at the overall responsibilities in the context of the other classifications within the department. And so it was a multifaceted approach and information basis that we used to establish them.
And there seems to be not very much difference between the admin 2 and the senior admin. Can you elaborate on what's the criteria? I know that the senior has to establish positive working relationships with representatives of the community, and that they have to communicate clearly and concisely, but I'm not sure, they're very similar. The essential functions are very, very similar to the admin 2, administrative analyst 2, and so what is the main difference in duties? Because they both report, it's not that it's just the seniors overseeing the other admin analysts, they're all reporting to
Not necessarily.
supervisor.
So we have to look at the job descriptions a little bit separately than the proposed org chart. So the proposed org chart is related to proposed positions within the hydropower department. The job specification for admin analysts could be utilized in any department, but I think some of those differentiations will become more clear once we do some of the modifications, administrative 1, 2. But essentially, the senior admin analyst could provide supervisory duties depending on the different classifications within their structure. For example, it would be likely that they would either oversee an admin analyst if there was ever the need for one, or an NA management assistant.
So we are keeping the management assistant, we're not moving everyone. Seems like
We were conflating two things. So in general, the job description request is related to adding a new set of job specifications to our job specification portfolio. The request related to actual full-time equivalent modifications for the hydropower department for the annual budget for 2022 does not result in still needing an MA and an admin analyst. The MA would essentially go away through an internal hiring process.
So we'll keep the MA position in our roster.
In our toolbox.
Does the admin analyst want to make more than an MA?
Mm-hmm.
So my concern is that some departments may say, well, we think our MA should be an analyst and so we can give her a pay raise, and then other ones say, well, we don't think and so it seems like we should do it, the duty statements across the board. If we're raising some MAs to analysts, we should get rid of MAs and make them analysts across the board.
Yeah, that's one perspective. I think from the recommendation that was before the board, the reclassification from the management assistant to the admin analyst, which we're proposing with this item, is reflective of the duties that will be additionally required through the acquisition of the South Yuba Canal, as well as some of the increased compliance activities. That position does have a higher level of responsibility that will even increase more through the acquisition of South Yuba Canal. Not all MAs work at an admin analyst level. A management assistant is more focused on administrative type tasks, travel, organization of meetings, document formation and preparation, those things. An analyst is somebody that really can take the ball on, for example, policy modification proposals, or participate in regional groups on our behalf, or do some of those more complex analyst tasks. So I do feel that it is warranted to still have a management assistant classification as well as an admin analyst classification. I think what you'll see is that when we start a more comprehensive review of all of our job specifications, it's likely that we'll start combining some of these. NID has historically relied upon this technician classification that has been kind of parsed out on a department by department basis to handle a umbrella of tasks that are really kind of in that analyst role. So I would more foresee not getting rid of the MA classification, but possibly combining some of those non-technical technician classifications into an analyst role.
I mean, a couple of thoughts. I think that MA role is essential for an organization like this. I mean, it just, I couldn't imagine not having it.
Yeah.
And it really is a different role than an analyst. So one observation I had, that when you think, Jennifer, about how you're going to reconceptualize your job classifications and job descriptions, is to put a percentage of time affiliated with each major work area. Because, I mean, it's not, in today's work world, I mean, you do what it takes to get the job done. And so, although an analyst's role typically is not going to be focused on administrative duties, you may require that sometimes. And so you might want to allocate 10% time. And for people whose major focus is that administrative support, they might be 80%, and they might do 20% analyst work. But it gives you the flexibility to have clarity within those kinds of positions that have overlap, which is required by the organization's structure and need. And you probably have that in other positions as well, where you give people an opportunity to learn new skills. But that's one thing I noticed was kind of lacking with the position descriptions. There's no time allocation, so therefore emphasis of job responsibilities isn't really clear across the breadth of tasks that they manage.
I like that idea a lot. For example, Greg and I were having a conversation this morning prior to the meeting along the same lines. I really like the percentage idea because, in fact, even I do administrative.
Exactly.
Greg does administrative tasks. But, you know, in our world, it's maybe 2% of our time.
Right.
So I do think that is a really good idea for differentiating. Overall, we need to do a wholesale review of all of our job specifications, so I think those are all good ideas that we carry forward into that larger effort as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think when you see the updated admin analyst ones to come back, you'll see some differentiation between the 1 and the 2. I think in the senior, to Director Peter's point, the senior role is really more focused on associated with administrative, with the management and the executive leadership of a particular department. So there is a much higher level of skill and analyst activities that would be required of the senior level position. That, you know, a 1, you could almost come in and you could say, I've got a couple years' experience in, example, just dental office administration, right? Come in, you could be a 1, set that up, but
Right.
you're not going to be a senior level analyst at a hydro department, in right hand to the management level of the hydro department to do certain analyst and, executive level overview and analysis of a department that we need. So there is a breadth and a growth within this family,
Yeah.
and that's what it's intended to do.
Right. Yeah, I think that's great.
But this MA and this admin analyst 1, 2, these are very similar. Perform administrative background, compile background data, perform a wide variety of complex, responsible administrative duties, assist in developing staff reports, first draft, interpreting department policies, and performing technical duties related to the area of assignment, interpreting, analyzing, determining compliance. I mean, a lot of these MA duties are exactly the same duties that are in the admin analyst 1.
I think that's why they're pulling
We're bringing it
that,
back.
yeah, bringing it back.
Bring it back, and you'll bring
Yeah.
this one back with it.
No, we will not be bringing that one back with it. That one will be staying as it is.
Because this has a lot of technical, create purchase orders, independently respond to letters, you know, so.
Which one are you referring
The
to?
management assistant, job duty statement.
Existing
The
MA job
existing
position?
MA job duty.
No, we're not planning on bringing it up.
I don't think it's warranted to bring it back. Let us work on the 1, 2, and the senior, and then we'll bring those back, and get a little bit more input and move forward from there.
And I encourage you you may need to revise this one, and this one's gonna get more. They're very, please just consider this existing one, but it's those 3. Okay.
Okay, are there any other questions on the job descriptions, or should we move on to the next item?
Move on.
I have no question. When you're looking at these other job descriptions, a lot of these other job descriptions pulled verbatim from the existing hydro maintenance supervisor, hydroelectric, and so, for example, so supervising electric, system technician, so.
Yeah, no, and that's, you're absolutely correct on that item. What we did with those job descriptions is in a lot of cases, we're modifying them to turn them into more of a hands-on sort of supervisor. So it's not a person that sits in an office all day. So the duties that we've added include actually physically going out and maintaining the equipment, which wasn't in there before. It's a working foreman as opposed to a supervisor that sits in the office the entire time.
And that is typical for public agencies in the maintenance arena, is for supervisory level to be able to complete the field tasks and complete the field tasks.
Okay, because the supervising mechanical civil foreman, let's look at that one real quick. It added some, to do the complex job work out in the field. And all of them are covered in the other ones, except for when you look at the, working conditions, it says that work is normally performed in temperature-controlled room environment, subject to typical noise. That would be field work?
I'm not following your question.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
on page 404 of the, so the supervising mechanical civil foreman.
Okay.
So it says advanced troubleshooting and repairs, independently operate a variety of heavy equipment in a safe manner. Anyway, so, but the working conditions is the same. Working is normally performed in a temperature-controlled room environment, operation. So most of that field work is in a temperature-controlled room?
So like inside of a hydropower plant. So it's, there's a lot of
Noise.
inside the building, there's noise, it is,
But it is temperature.
plant operation noise. Generally, yeah. So and it also talks about that they require field visits in an outdoor environment subject to outdoor conditions, including extreme heat and cold and wet, humid conditions, fumes and or airborne particles. So it
It's
basically,
in that inside, but most of their work is inside the power plant.
it depends on the assignment. As I mentioned before, we don't necessarily assign a body we certainly don't assign them to a powerhouse. But there will be days when they are entirely inside the powerhouse working, and there will be days when they're entirely out in the field working.
Is your question around the working work is normally provided
Well-
or performed, because it
Yeah, no, I think that, that, right now, it seems to me, and this, I may be completely off base here, but it seems to me we're just taking this opportunity to restructure and add a supervisory level position, where we've been wanting a hydro business, and this is adding quite a bit of staffing time, which is, it doesn't directly impact ratepayers, it takes away money from the ratepayers, causing the rate, ultimately the ratepayers are paying for this supervisory level that we're adding in. And we still don't have a good feel for the organization as a whole, so we're adding permanent staff before we really have done the planning and understanding the structure of hydro.
So let me try to help out here. So I think your question originally was related to working conditions.
Well,
So that was your concern, was related to working conditions. I think that as it's written, I think for what they do, it is perfectly appropriate. So I guess I'm having a hard time making the leap from working conditions to the structural comment now. So we do have a structural issue within hydropower organization in that they're lacking that mid-level supervisory level that can provide supervisory oversight to actual field tasks. And so these folks also need to be technically sound from a field and maintenance perspective and also work outside. This is a normal level of supervision that you see within public agencies that have public works or do some type of maintenance, whether it be water or hydropower, and it's just simply missing. And so with the acquisition of the South Yuba Canal, which comes with one additional powerhouse as well as 17 miles of additional flume, there is a need for additional staff members, especially given the context that we cut a significant amount of staff in the 2022 budget. Now, when we proposed the 2022 budget to the board, we did indicate that they did not include any staffing for the acquisition of the South Yuba Canal, and when we were able to have the transition approved from FERC and the acquisition move forward, that we would then be coming back with a budget amendment that included a request for staff as well as some ancillary expenses related to equipment purchasing and licensing and consultant work. The proposed increase of 3.75 full-time equivalents is essentially bringing hydropower back almost to the level, not quite, it's still below the level that they were approved for in the 2021 budget. So I do want to commend Ken. So this is a pretty big undertaking that we've been able to essentially absorb into the budget we had in 2021. We went through and did some cost cutting in the context of knowing we were going to have to take the South Yuba Canal and we didn't want to greatly increase expenditures. So from the perspective of the staff that is being proposed, it is absolutely needed. It is new infrastructure, and we would not be able to support that infrastructure from a maintenance or operation perspective if we do not receive the approval for the new staff. We would have to start looking at other cost-cutting measures in other areas of hydropower, which would be extremely difficult due to the regulatory complexity as well as the safety and risk issues that we have. So today, what we're showing, what Kian is showing right now, are proposed additions, which do not, there's 5 proposed additions as far as different classifications, 2.25 deletions for a proposed net increase of 3.75 full-time equivalents. Now, in an ideal world, we would have had a ton of more time to do this, but unfortunately, South Yuba Canal transition did sneak up on us very quickly, and FERC was not very forthright in the timing of that, and we had, it's been sitting for quite some time, several years in fact, And so here we are, needing to address this today.
Now it's here.
Yeah.
So well said, Jennifer, and Rich has a comment.
Yeah, amen. Okay. So we went lean in hydro, which is, in this job market, is not a good position to be in, because it can affect our current operations. Revenue from the new operation will pretty much cover these positions, or somewhat offset a little bit.
It'll offset not all of the total expenditures included as required as a budget amendment. It will
Right.
help to offset some of the salary benefit.
Correct. Okay, but it's needed for all our hydro. And hydro is not something we need to go short on right now. It's hard to get replacements, hard to retain the ones we have. So, I mean, it just makes a lot of sense. You're telling us what you need to operate that division.
And I would add to that, that this is an extremely lean addition. This is,
How many positions, how many positions, Ken, were in the original proposal, 3 years ago?
there were 11 positions that were slated to add.
And is that still true today, that you,
We're adding 3.75.
oh, I know, but 3.7 to 11 seems to be the range. What is the magic sweet number?
We're lean and mean.
I remember 5, I don't remember 11.
That was 5 just in maintenance, so that was not, that was not related to hydropower. Yeah.
It's
So-
a 100-year-old plant that runs just like on its own. I mean, it's a very uncomplex plant.
And all the mandarins get picked by themselves too.
And you'll notice that you know, we haven't added a hydro plant operator because of this. We've added a water system operator, which is the guy that, he'll go out and, patrol the ditch, and then take reads at the powerhouse, but they aren't authorized to make changes inside the powerhouse in terms of load or do the switching or anything like that. So our hope is that this will run pretty autonomously, and that's how PG&E has run it. We have slated, when I was calculating my hours, through 2 to 3 site visits a week to the powerhouse, and that's less than we like to go to a lot of our other powerhouses, but given the history of how it runs, that's the way we're dealing with it.
And there also needs to be recognition of the distance to which the powerhouse is located. It is a pretty long trek to get out there.
Need a helicopter to get there.
In the winter, it takes a day, so, to get out there.
Any other.
No, it's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Out in the country.
Ken, what's the span of control for the 2 new supervisory positions?
They will have, it's actually a little heavy, compared to what you would see in a 4 to 6 sort of range. On the electrical side, there will be
4
4.
positions.
Excellent, like, senior, yeah, so 4.
And then the other one is 1.
More the civil mechanical foreman side, it's a little bit heavier there.
It's 6.
Okay, so those are completely within the standard of.
Yep.
Yeah. And I assume if you didn't have those supervisory positions, then the span would go double or?
And that's what it is now.
That's what it is now. So
Okay.
right now, and so the idea is in the future is when, through natural attrition from retirements, we would go down to 1 superintendent and then have the supervisory structure. So we're
Right.
setting ourselves up for this in the future.
Okay, that's helpful to know.
So we will be getting one, because right now, the hydroelectric generation superintendent and the maintenance superintendent have pretty much the same, duties as the new positions you're proposing.
With the exception of the superintendents typically work in the office. They are not field workers. They're much more driven by making maintenance planning schedules, much more compliance documentation driven, as opposed to the new level of supervisor, which will have supervisory responsibilities, but they'll spend their first hour or 2 in the office in the morning, getting everything put together, and then they'll be out in the field turning wrenches in the afternoon, so.
But I think, Laura, that span of control issue is one of the points that you raised. And I think that this discussion helps to clarify that it is an appropriate span of control so that, again, we're not just inflating management structure, so, anyway.
In today's, I have trust in you guys not to inflate anything.
Well, I mean, I think it's a reasonable question to ask, but I think that we've kind of got to the heart of what the question is,
Yeah.
so that's fine.
We've talked.
All right, if there's no more questions, are we ready to move on from that one? Oh, Kian moved on. Kian.
We can certainly go back if there are additional questions about the staff numbers. All right, so Fund 50 hydroelectric operations, the 2022 increase is a little over $1 million. This does include a couple of different things. This prorates the labor and benefits. So this is not a full year's worth of labor and benefits. It's based on expected hiring. We're adding these new positions, but there's no way you can go out and get all of these people tomorrow. So I've talked with Human Resources. We've kind of come up with a schedule that we're going to try and go out and hire these folks by, and then that assumption has been rolled into the dollar amount you're seeing before you. The 2022 labor and benefit increase is $400,000.
Yeah, and I wish I would have known about the Steve 53, or, that was to see what, the salary schedules are by classifications, it's not by these categories.
You should be able to track them.
No, they
You
are.
should be able to look.
Yeah,
it up.
they are.
They are.
Everybody has that book.
On the webpage.
So the salary, right,
Affiliated with the,
Yeah,
classification.
but it's alphabetical according to classification, and then there's all different ones, they're not sorted by the.
They're not sorted by the
with the
level, they're sorted by the classification.
Yeah,
Alphabetical.
yeah, and so that's, so I learned something, I didn't know that that's how they work. And it's probably new, because I don't know what the long-term, this is for 3 positions for part of a year, but once these positions are filled, kind of what's the long-term, and this is a comment on the budgetary impact, to have only be this year, it doesn't give us a whole picture of what adding permanent staffing, we've got them through retirement, and so it's good to know the magnitude of when they're all hired and how much more. Is it $1 million a year that we're adding to the overall
So
budget?
2023, how much will it be in 2023?
That's all we're looking at.
The number.
But
Oh,
I think we should look at a long,
That's 2022,
2022.
but you're asking what, the next year, how
we're
much?
currently doing a budget amendment for 2022, so fully loaded. What did we anticipate? It's only 6 months.
Each year, how much extra?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even the worst.
How much can is the 2023?
The 2023 expected labor and benefits cost is about $835,000.
So it's about double.
Okay.
That's assuming all of these 5 positions are filled.
Filled at the top step for the entire year.
At
It's
the,
only 3.275 positions.
it's only.
It's not 5 positions.
Oh,
Correct.
All right.
how much was it, 800?
$835,000.
So once we get the other 2, it's probably closer to $1 million.
I'm unclear what the other 2 are from.
Because we're asking for 5 or 1.5.
So remember, we're conflating 2 issues. We're requesting for the 5 job descriptions, and then we're requesting for reclassifications of existing staff, and then we'll be deleting staff. So it still remains at the 3.75 unless through the 2023 budget process, we determine there's a need for additional staff.
Oh, so we're just adding duty statements with no intention of hiring people.
That's what the state.
It's a multi-part resolution. One of the parts is to request approval of new job specifications. One is to request modifications to the approved full-time equivalents for hydropower, which results in a net increase of 3.75 positions. In total, we are deleting 2.25 positions and increasing only by 3.75 positions.
Yeah.
So is it safe to say the old number we were batting around here at Church Street since I've been here is $2 million a year additional?
Yes, easily.
On the budget for South Cuba Canal when it comes on.
Yeah, so we're,
We have a full fire number there.
yes.
It sounds like it might even.
Not for labor. So we're looking at about 1.2 million increase for this year. So next year, you're easily looking at a flat, about 1.5 million. And normal equipment, there's some additional capital this year for connection of the hydropower plant to our existing systems. So there's quite a bit of work rolled up into that, which is reflected in that proposed capital project. In future years, you're gonna have your normal equipment. What is not included and what we haven't planned out for is the long-term repair and maintenance of the flume, which we have all, I think, tentatively agreed needs to be addressed in some way or another. So I do think that it's a very reasonable number to say that this acquisition will likely cost us a minimum of $2.2 million a year, including capital replacement.
So this is not a.
But not including, excuse me, Chris, but not including the repairs that are currently being analyzed, right? For the entire canal.
That would probably include kind of the, repair as is or in kind. That would not include, restructuring the whole system.
Yes,
So
yes.
to reduce the risk, whether
Yes.
that be via tunnel or concrete pipe or something like that. That could easily run you another, $30 million over the next 20 years.
Right.
Yeah.
We're talking annual general maintenance and repair.
Yeah, annual, routine annual general maintenance and repair is reasonable to anticipate will cost around $2 million a year.
Yeah.
But that survey that doing on the South Yuba, PG&E has to bring that up to standards.
And so they're
That was in
required to
the-
bring
That was in the
it to
contract, wasn't it?
It's only the change.
materially the same as when the
Yeah.
contract was signed.
Yeah.
Right, but that was some years ago.
It was about 2.5 years ago, and we are in the process of doing all the testing of the equipment right
Right.
now, where the walk down of the canal is scheduled for next week. So we'll know a whole lot more about what that looks like in the next
Mhm.
week or two.
And so that's,
Go ahead. My point is that this is not a surprise, the future budget is not a surprise today. That's
Right.
But I heard that statement made, that we don't know what's gonna happen. Yes, we do, because we've had this $2 million number for 5 years.
right, and that's in the hydro alone, right? That's hydro alone, there's water increases as well for maintenance for water.
No.
The way we're structured now, the hydroelectric department will operate and
Yeah.
maintain.
Oh, they will, okay,
Mhm.
because there were water,
At one point there was, but
It's back and forth with it.
that structure has changed.
Planning structure changed.
We determined because of the location, the ease of access, and the span of supervisory control out in the field, that it's more appropriate to house it in one of department or the other. Based off of simply the location and the fact that the hydropower plant has to be visited, it made more sense from a logistical perspective to house the oversight and maintenance of the system in hydropower.
oh, that's new, I didn't know that. So $2 million is all in, canal and hydro plant.
With the exception of long-term capital that would be associated with any long-term solution for the system.
Okay, I was missing that part as well, I didn't know we moved it back. Hydro.
Ricky has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ricky, you're gonna have to shout it out. I'm not watching your
Okay.
lovely face.
We will.
Oh, great. Thank you. Jennifer and Kian, I wonder if you guys would restate for the board, but especially the public, the reason that we are acquiring this very expensive asset, that it is the main artery, I believe, for our water. And if we could just kind of revisit the purpose for this, it might help folks out there who are hearing that, oh my goodness, we're doing this 2 million, and we got capital, we got all these other things, and we're increasing our labor and benefits. But there's a really important reason behind it. And if one of you guys would address that, I think it would be helpful.
I think you nailed it. This is the lifeline. This is how we bring water into Grass Valley, Nevada. It's the supply for the major canals, the major diversions on that side of the system. This is the supply for Nevada County.
So if we did not enter into an acquisition agreement with PG&E, they were looking to divest themselves of this actual asset. And so there could be a potential that they could sell it to some third party.
Somebody else,
And then-
right?
and then-
Yeah.
Correct, and then NID would either be subject to building a new facility, which would be close to impossible in this day and age, or paying some type of outrageous wheeling fees. I can assure you that I'm not overly comfortable with the purchase either. Buying something that has new costs associated, not revenue, that exceeds those costs is heartbreaking to me, but.
Me too.
We are, Kian has just done
Well-
an amazing job of getting those costs reduced as low as possible. And I think it's a big testament to Kian's commitment to the district, going from a staff request of, 11, 12 folks to 3.75. has put him, you know, he had to get out of his comfort box, but, you know, he did it, and he thought long and hard about it, and so I greatly appreciate it. I think have a really good proposal for a situation that probably isn't ideal.
But we also have to probably consider down the road whether we can continue to operate this at a loss.
Correct. There's going to be some long conversations, a lot of thoughts, some detailed analysis that's going to have to go into this entire stretch of infrastructure.
Mhm. So it's accurate to say that if we had not stepped up to purchase this, this would have gone on the open market, and there may well have been a private buyer looking to capitalize and get some return on their investment that we would then be vulnerable to. Is that right?
Probably.
Yeah.
Either PG&E wouldn't find a buyer, or...
They'd walk away?
It's another option that hasn't been mentioned, is it could be decommissioned.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, right. So what's really, it's looking out for our future and our water supply by us, you know, making this great big giant step to acquire this facility, even though it's going to cost us a lot of money, but we are ensuring our water supply. And I think that's the message that I would like us to work on and provide for the public.
Good point, Ricky.
Very good point, Ricky. Thank you.
I'm hearing board consensus for my minutes.
Well, let's move on to the next slide.
All right. So the next slide. So we are looking at this is the Fund 55 hydroelectric capital increase. There is an increase of approximately $180,000. This is a one-time cost for us to kind of integrate this into our system. This is a microwave connection so that we can see it on SCADA and remotely monitor it and operate it. This is some SCADA licenses that we need just in general. Every time you throw software out there, you have to pay more for it. So this is a one-time cost. There will be capital costs associated with both the Powerhouse and the Flume, and we'll start discussing those more in quarter 2 of 2022. And so then the next item we're asking you to approve today is a power purchase agreement. This is a very similar agreement to the one we just approved for the Home South Powerhouse. It's a relatively short term, and again, we did that with an eye to figuring out all the finances in the hydroelectric department, making sure it works as a business unit, and then moving forward and renegotiating a power purchase agreement from there. There is typically more value in a longer term power purchase agreement. Yep. It can be, if you're willing to sign a 10-year agreement, that's kind of the magic number, and we just weren't there yet with our knowledge of the way all the numbers are penciling out. Very standard agreement. They're going to pay us the local price for the power. There's a price for the resource adequacy, and then there's a price for the renewable energy credits. I expect to make about $580,000 this year in revenue out of that Powerhouse, depending on when we can bring it online and get everything brought together. And then annually, it's in the neighborhood of about $700,000 in revenue from the Powerhouse.
So that's about 5.5 cents per watt?
It varies pretty wildly, and depending on the season and natural gas prices and all the other things that,
I mean, which are,
round numbers I use.
are just now taking off?
Yeah, an annual average is 3 to 4 cents. The good news about this Powerhouse is that it tends to run during the summer because it's irrigation season, and that's when we run our hardest. That's also when you see the peak power prices on the market. So July, August, September, that's when the money is made.
So I had a contract one time that pegged it to the natural gas price. If it went over $3, whatever the BTU or something, then I'd get more. Can we peg it to, I mean, natural gas was close to 5.
Try. I'm not familiar with any recent.
Because if there's no demand
Okay.
and natural gas is low.
Yeah, and so I should say in a future contract we can try.
Yeah, okay.
Short term.
Well, I just wanted to open that up because.
This is how part of that JPA we essentially belong to, where they have a standard, they have a standard agreement. And so with this particular one, we couldn't, but as a consideration for future.
Which is one of the other reasons for a shorter term contract. We can do a lot of different things. We can package it with Combi South, and try and sell the two powerhouses together, get a little more creative.
Well, or just take it to demand, because we have a basis, and as the demand and price go up for natural gas, or they go up for whatever, electricity, we should be able to participate.
Well, in a lot of ways, we are pegged to that, and that is the beauty of getting paid the LMP, the locational marginal price. So that varies, I mean, every 5 minutes that can change.
Correct.
So as gas prices go up, that price goes up. As, as solar and wind come online, that price goes down. So it's very much market-based from that standpoint.
Ian?
So peak hours now is 4 to 9, which kicks solar out.
Yep.
So now hydro kicks in higher.
Yep.
Along with potentially kicking up on wind also.
Yep.
More production. So I just, what PG&E is doing with that 4 to 9 peak rate at 55 cents or whatever it is, there's a lot of opportunity for hydro.
Well, so that is when we generate, right? And we get paid that locational price
Okay.
at that time. So essentially what our strategy is to bid into the day ahead, and they forecast prices based on your generation, and we meet those prices, and those prices are all over the place during the day. So we see that benefit prices dip during the day, especially a sunny day, and then they come back up, and we generate at that point, so.
Gotcha, thank you.
My question is, do you have any ability to operate that plant with heating power more so than other power, or is it more, it appears to be a steady, all day long operation?
So generally, it's a fairly steady operation. A lot of that is controlled by the forebay. There are some reservoir operating elevation restrictions on that forebay, so you really can't cycle it a whole lot during the day.
My question was, what about the forebay? Okay.
Yeah, and so that's something that we'll have to look at. Does a capital project out there to allow us to cycle that?
My question, does it warrant increasing the revenue for that plant to upgrade the forebay?
Yeah, and we just don't know the answer to that yet. PG&E has just kind of been content to keep the forebay low, let the powerhouse chug along.
Yeah.
That's certainly something we're gonna have to look at and try and calculate.
I like that.
Ian, I got lost in part of your management write-up.
Okay.
On page 5, under the power purchase agreement, that paragraph, in order to forecast the energy revenue, could you just walk me through that in a
Okay.
little bit more detail for the novice?
Yeah, no, well, and these are sort of things that I like to dive into. So essentially what I did is I looked at that period of record, the 2010 to 2018, on a monthly generation basis. From there, I calculated the mean generation per month, and it can vary pretty wildly depending on whether or not the wind was getting on the mountain. There was a period there that wasn't useful. From there, I went one standard deviation below the mean and assumed that was going to be the generation for the month. I applied that monthly generation to the same dollar per month, average cost per month that we used for the additional information requests when we calculated the financial impacts of that. And when you multiply all that out, you get a number at the bottom that is the expected dollar per kilowatt hour
Okay.
per month.
Okay.
So it's based on the historic record of generation and pricing.
Okay. Thank you.
And I didn't hear the question, but it was on page 5 of the
That bottom
anomaly.
paragraph.
Yeah, it was just a little bit more information on how the price was calculated and some of the assumptions that, the forecast, and some of the assumptions that went into it.
So you did it looking at the historical, but what if there's not as much water coming through the system? Did you take that into account?
So the South Yuba Canal is fairly steady since it's demand driven. There aren't huge fluctuations in it. If you look through the period of record, you don't see the droughts show up a whole lot. There's certainly high years and low years, but it's mainly, it's entirely imported water, so it's fairly consistent. Pricing data is the crystal ball in the equation, so it is backward looking in that respect.
the connection between the forecasting revenue impacts at the Dutch Flat to Powerhouse? The connection there.
And so every point in the CalISO grid has a node that it's connected to, and each node has a price. And so when I went through and looked at the nodes that this was, the Powerhouse is connected to, it was really kind of all over the place. There were some really high highs and some really low lows. And I just wasn't comfortable for using it from a forecasting standpoint. And so I went to the Dutch Flat Powerhouse, which kind of mimics Chicago Park, and they're all in that same range.
Okay.
And so I was just much more comfortable with that data, and the interconnection's close enough that it should be similar.
Okay.
Why were
Thank
there
you.
such high highs and such low lows at Deer Creek?
I don't know, and it's an interesting something. We're gonna have to watch that node closely, see how it behaves and how it interacts. That may change our strategy as we bid this into the market.
Did you ask PG&E about it, why it was so widely varying?
We talked about it a little bit, but I don't know that they know. It's not something they have any control of either. This is the CalISO node. They do all the pricing, they do all the closing, they do everything, and it's PG&E stays at arm's length to that.
And it's so small, they probably don't care.
Exactly, I was
Yeah,
thinking that
probably.
too, yeah.
So small, they
Yeah.
don't care.
And we see anomalies at other nodes as well. I follow the Combi South node very closely. And you'll find that just during the day, some days, out of nowhere, the price is zero. And it'll do that for a day or two in a row, and then it'll go back to normal. We filed some, protest is the wrong word, but inquiries with the CalISO, and to try and figure out what's going on. And there isn't a whole lot of information available. And it could be something as simple as a PG&E had work on the distribution system, and they had that work scheduled during those hours, and since there was no demand, they weren't willing to pay anything for it, and that showed up in the node's pricing. So
Isn't this how Enron operated?
No, right? So that's the beauty of the CAISO, right, is that they are an independent organization that oversees all of this.
If it's been high, high, low, low before, why do you think they're not gonna be high, high, low, low going forward?
I don't know.
But we assumed it on a steady flat, which was more.
Average.
It's simply a forecast that is, based on the best information that we have available. The only thing about the forecast is that it'll be wrong, right? Hopefully it's higher, but
You have a basis because you made a forecast.
And according to the White House, everybody has to go out and buy electric cars, so demand's gonna go up.
Right, okay.
You had to say that, didn't you?
I did.
Before we get to this side, I have just a couple more questions back. On the 2022 org chart, there's only 2 hydroelectric water system operators, and we're not asking for many operators. So two operators are gonna maintain all of this, including the rest of the.
So there are 2 now, and we're adding 1. That is one of the full-time equivalents that's being added.
And where does it specifically say the exact positions that are added?
So in
The
the
table?
staff report, table 1 shows what's being added and what's being deleted.
On page 3.
Okay, great.
There's also a slide.
1, 2, 3, 4. But this is 6 positions and only 3.75 remaining.
Minus the 2 1/4 in the deletions column.
6 job descriptions.
Well, in this case, we're talking full-time equivalent. We're
Right.
adding 6 and then taking away the 2 1/4 for net.
Which equals 3.75.
And so, but which of these 6 are you gonna hire in 2022?
I'd like to hire them all, but they will be staged as we go throughout the year.
Okay, and so there is no senior administrative analyst in this additions list?
That's correct. So the senior analyst is a job description we're talking about adding, but not a tool that we're using now in this full-time equivalent.
Okay.
We're including that because it's a family with both admin analyst 1, 2. So while we're talking about it, it makes sense to add senior as a family now.
Okay. And you're gonna be reviewing that whole family right now, so that's number 1 is gonna hire him just yet. The admin analyst 1, 2.
Correct, yeah, we can bring that job description back.
Okay.
Yeah, next board meeting.
Three operators and can take care of all of it.
We're gonna be stretched really thin, right? The approach to this was to be extremely lean, and there is a possibility that we'll come back next year and say, hey, look, based on our metrics, we aren't making it to the powerhouses, we aren't getting our inspections done, and we're gonna need to have that conversation at a later date. But to start out with, we felt it was appropriate to staff and learn the system and go from there.
Thank you for taking that approach, Kean.
Yeah.
Because I know that comes at a stress level.
Yeah.
And others probably
Right,
too.
right. Yeah, I didn't know it was all back in hydro, so that makes sense.
Okay.
Steve, when we get to the resolution, can you clarify on page 2, the date, based on the position you're gonna come at the next meeting?
Yeah. So it's item 2A, under the now for be resolved, we're going to delete the administrative analyst 1/2. Do we want to bring the,
Yeah, so you're gonna have to make a modification to the resolution in item 1.
item 1?
So we will be striking administrative analyst 1, 2, and senior administrative analyst. And in item 2, we will be striking 2A, administrative analyst 1, 2.
If we do that, then we need to strike the deletion of the management assistant at this time as well.
We can just say,
Is that 3B?
yeah, they can approve the deletion and we cannot implement it.
Yeah.
As long as we're all comfortable that that person still has a job.
Yeah.
And there is a person in that position, so.
All right, so we will do, number 1, I recommend striking administrative analyst 1, 2, and senior administrative analyst. On number 2 of the resolution, I recommend striking 2A. And on 3 of the resolution, I recommend striking 3B.
3B. This is in Ricky's district, so she gets to read it.
Yeah, and you could also just state, approve the resolution as amended and stated by the general manager.
Right, that's right. And, I do want to say, Kian, you have done just a wonderful job here, and thank you so much for all of the good work and the good thinking and the critical thinking that went into this. And, having been on the board now for nearly 4 years, I sort of saw this in its infancy, and it felt like this giant, unmanageable, 10-legged hydra or something. And you have managed to bring it back to us over these years, and it's actually, you're going to do this. I know you will, and I'm really pleased that the approach that you've taken. So.
This is we will do this, and Greg and Naomi down in HR had a huge part in all this stuff.
Right,
together,
but
so.
you assembled the team, and at the end of the day, you're going to be responsible. So you've done a wonderful job putting together the team and really working on this to get it to where it is. And so thank you. And with that, I would move approval for the resolution. Is it 20-22? Help me out here, guys. Unfortunately, 13, thank you.
13.
My screen is kind of funny here remotely, but as amended. So, thank you.
Second,
We have a second.
and public comment.
Any member of the public like to comment on our discussion on the resolution 2022-13, South Yuba Canal, Deer Creek Powerhouse? If you'd like to comment today, start on your phones. Okay, don't see any. All right.
Yep, there we go. Yeah.
You want?
Nope, crossed out. Glasses on.
Madam Secretary, you call the roll, please.
Division 4,
Aye.
Division 1,
Yes?
5,
Yes,
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 2.
Thank you.
Then I.
Yeah, that was an aye, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
nicely
Thank you,
done.
Ian. Good job, and we look
Thank you,
forward
Kian.
to with this challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next item is general order number 6, standing committees. This item has been brought back to the board, for request to, take a new, another look at the committees versus the workshop, model we're using now. Jennifer?
Thank you, President Beerwagen. Based off of a request from the board, I think that was originated from Director Peters, the board desired to revisit the committee structure. So in the current board policy, 5300, standing committees, it provides for the following committees: Administrative Practices Committee, Water and Hydroelectric Operations Committee, Engineering Committee, and Maintenance and Resource Management Committee. Those are referred to as standing committees. And then our ad hoc committees are also identified as Water Rates, Labor, Water Committee, which is PCW and NID. In February 2021, the board directed staff to discontinue the committee structure. Previously, standing committees were meeting on a weekly basis, so there was a significant amount of staff work that was associated with the committee structure. And so typically what would occur is that an item such as a policy change or a new capital project would first go to committee and then to the board. Originally, it was intended for the committee structures, my understanding, to increase efficiencies within the district by allowing the committee to essentially screen things before they came to the board. However, as time went on, it actually became just a duplicative effort between the committees and the board, so the information was basically not being modified, it's just being presented at two different forms. Which does increase staff load, and as you know, we do have a very high workload right now. So there was a request to discuss, we've kind of gone to a workshop structure, so workshops can occur either the Tuesday prior to the first board meeting of every month, or they can be incorporated into a actual regular board meeting. And the workshop structure essentially means it's a non-decision item, and it's intended for that item to come back before the board for additional consideration after we've workshopped the item to obtain input. And so, as you know, we've been working with that structure and working through that. So the board did desire to have a conversation regarding if they wanted to continue with the workshop structure or go back to the standing committee structure, as well as there's also ad hoc committees contemplated in that existing board policy. An ad hoc committee is a non-standing committee that's really for a single purpose, that doesn't have any type of legislative or voting authority, and therefore is not subject to the Brown Act. So at times, there have been ad hoc committees directed to be formed by the board that usually involve a couple of board members as well as staff members and or the public. And those are intended to work on singular issues, and the board does, or the ad hoc committee typically does not have any type of voting power. They're more to kind of work with the public and work through issues. And so we are here today to ask for the board's desire regarding reinstating the standing committees, as well as we do have a request for one additional ad hoc committee, and that is to have two board members appointed to an ad hoc committee with South Sutter Water District board members for the purpose of working through the ongoing negotiations related to their application for waiver of the state-filed water rate application that we also have a water rate application submitted for, as well as their protests on our application. And so with that, I'll turn it back to the board, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay,
Can I start?
you sure can.
Go ahead and start since I requested it. So, absolutely. So this has been an iterative process. We've been trying to figure out what's the best way to get information to all the board members so everyone has the opportunity to hear the same information. And so we had thought in the standing committees, for a perfect example is this item would have come to a standing committee, like APC committee, to discuss these personnel issues and these changes and get all the questions answered and get time between the presentation of the item and the actual vote. So they could get hashed out and everyone could get on the same page and understand what's going on, and then it would come to a future board meeting for action. And so in the standing committees, when we had standing committees, it wasn't only rear view mirror information presented, statistics, and this is what we've done, and this is, it was looking forward. This is where we're at. These are the problems we're having. You know, here's what we're thinking, and then we would provide input as the board members on the standing committees to help staff, you know, figure things out and move forward, and then items would come to the board for action. And so it seems like we've gotten away from that forward-looking workshop discussions that we used to have in the standing committees, to having a 1 hour rear view, here's what we did the last quarter or the last period. And so I think it's very valuable, and in the standing committees, you know, by way of the work, the committees enhance productivity and expand transparency. I learned a lot this morning just about these 60, I learned things that I never knew. I've been here 4 years, I never knew that that's how the salary scales were done. But it would have come out in the standing committee because we would have been discussing it without having to take action. And then we could go back and listen to see, well, what were they, and have more informed decisions. I'm striving for more informed decisions by the board, where we have more information to understand the basis of our decisions. And so I would propose that we have workshops at these 2 hour meetings, you know, once a month or even twice a month before the next meeting, to have dedicated time with the board and the different departments on a regular basis to see what are they facing right now, what are they going through, what's coming down the road, what are the challenges, and have the board be able to have understanding of the issues before we have to vote on them. That was my thought as to why I think that we should go back to a more more open discussion rather than just receiving information in workshop settings where the whole board is there. To go through ABC, 1, 3, 4, and do these standing committees. And if there's not enough information in 1 month, do 2 standing meetings in the 2 hour period, 1 hour in each, but to have more forward-looking of what's going on rather than just reporting out. I'd like to open it to discussion and see what the rest of the board thinks.
Laura, could you give us an example of, since we've been doing the workshop format, which I'm very comfortable with the timing of the information myself, an example of something that, and Jennifer and I, we agreed on one particular one that sort of fell through the cracks that happened, but have since modified the system so that things that need discussion, that we feel that are new, that we need to have more opportunity that they get a workshop before. Okay.
Well, we had 4 hours of workshop yesterday, one on financial and the other on plan for water. And both are forward thinking.
Right. We'll keep the plan for water separate because we're going to do that separate.
Right.
That's the first one that's been actually forward thinking.
So we actually workshopped the South Yuba Canal items prior.
But we didn't talk about this, we just talked about it, we didn't look at these duty statements or look at, this was all new information that was provided with respect to the structure. We talked about adding positions and deleting positions, but we should publish information so we know that we're on the same page, make sure we're receiving it. We should be more transparent and have, not just talking on video, we should have, for the workshop, we should have had this item, for whatever item it was, we should have had all that information in the workshop, if that's what we were truly workshopping. If we were truly workshopping this item, I don't think we touched this item. We talked very broadly, very generically, very, no specifics. And to me, that's not workshopping it. Because when I read this, I'm going, wow, this is really different. I learned that it's not in water anymore. We had water operators or water people doing the Yuba Canal before. Well, now we're not having, I never knew that. How?
Oh, I did.
Because you guys talk.
I think maybe there's there's just a little bit of, so it's all up to the board's desire. Typical boards do not require that level. It's kind of getting into the micromanagement level and into the weeds. Board really, and it really wasn't very efficient. It wasn't very productive from a staff perspective. Having to go to a committee meeting every single week is extremely time consuming. So there's 4 committees. Yeah, so it's 4 times a month.
Right.
Yeah. It's extremely time consuming.
With every man.
Yeah, and I actually had an opportunity to go back and watch some of the committee meeting videos just for my own knowledge to better understand what was occurring in the committee meetings. And there were several committee meetings that definitely crossed the line from typical board involvement into kind of getting into the weeds and maybe not being very productive. But, you know, like I said, it's entirely the board's desire. You know, I do try to lay out the schedule regarding what's being workshopped versus what is not, as far as the decision making. And so, you know, we're happy to receive direction from the board. If we do desire to go back to the committee structure, it is going to delay some things. So we are going to have to do some scheduling adjustment. It just is a whole nother public meeting staff puts together, is a whole new agenda. And then frankly, from what I saw, there wasn't a whole lot of efficiencies obtained from the committee meetings because then we were answering the same questions again once we got to the board.
That's why I wanted in the workshop. I think that I'd like to hear from the board personally. I'd like to hear what the rest of the board what is thinking about it, because I know that the two of the board members have never participated in committees. But I think that the more.
Never say never.
Well,
I went to 2.
You went to 2, okay.
That's not correct, but
Yeah,
we were never on the dais.
on the diet, right. But it's,
Yeah, that's true too.
yeah, that's what I meant, to actually participate in them. And so, well, from a board perspective.
Go ahead, Ricky, you'll have to speak up, I'm not watching.
No, there's no hand up, is there?
No,
We were
I
talking-
actually, I was going to weigh in, so but I'm trying not to jump the line here. I don't know who's got what.
Go ahead and jump.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead and jump. Okay. So I've been sitting here listening, Laura, and thinking about this. And, you know, part of the reason I believe that we left the committee structure was because it was duplicative. And that when information came out, like, for instance, when I was on APC with whoever it was, the board chair, Nick or whoever, well, we would get all this great information, and then the thing was said, okay, well, let's bring it to the board for a decision. And the same problem that you're describing would happen at the board level, because there were 3 other members who weren't involved in the initial discussion. And so everything had to be repeated. And it really was, I think, very duplicative. And so I really like this workshop format. You know, I think it's very transparent. I don't know why it's less transparent than the committee, structure that we had. And I think that staff has done a really good job, and we get a much more in-depth look at whatever the issues are with the workshop than even at like the committee level. So I really, like it. I would support continuing with the workshop. I think that the idea of a couple of ad hoc committees here and there, like Karen and I were on the ad hoc labor committee. That would have been an ad hoc, right? Yeah. And, that was really good because we got really in the weeds with that and it was necessary. And then we had a series of board meetings afterwards where everybody was brought along into the information that we revealed and discussed and the policy. So, I think that having ad hoc is really important when it's necessary, but I really like the workshop format, actually. So that's my thought.
Can I respond?
Sure.
Yeah, so Ricky, I completely agree. I am 100% in favor of the workshop format. But like you mentioned, there was a lot of stuff that happened in like the APC committee, and then it comes to the board, and the board, 3 of the members hadn't heard it.
Right.
And we had questions, and then it was a problem. So if we workshop things that we used to hear in APC, and engineering, and food, and maintenance, M&R, and the maintenance and resource management, if we hear it before, and then by the time, and all the directors hear it, and the workshop, and then we act on it on the next meeting, even if we act on it, the 2 weeks later, just have to where if problems come up or the board has questions, we can get to the bottom of it, and then it comes for decision on the next one. Then it would be consistent. Everyone would already understand the basis of that.
Isn't that
So
kind of what
I'm
we're doing right now?
Yep.
I mean, that
Looking
seems like,
forward.
because you started this by saying you really wanted to go back to the committees. And now what I hear you saying is that we want to do the workshops so that everybody gets informed. And I think that is what we're doing now.
So far,
Someone help me here.
I'm trying.
You're right on, Ricky. I think that you have to lay the foundation, which we were doing with engineering, water operations, plan for water, laying the foundation. Now we're starting to look forward and projecting out what the risk analysis on the South Yuba, it's all in there.
Yeah.
And we're handling that in the workshop that's the hour, 2 hour every month. Perfect. Everybody's together. We don't have to come down here multiple times. We can concentrate on what is happening in front of us. I like the system, workshops as needed and ad hoc committees as needed.
I think workshops should be regular, and I think that like you said, this was reiterated, that all this information we heard today on the staffing was already this workshop.
I think
And
there
I
might,
don't think the staffing was workshopped.
the staffing was workshop, so, but I think what the difference is the difference between, what a typical board function is and maybe what your expectation of a board function is. So it really isn't, so for example, a normal, method of approving a new policy would be very similar to when Mr. Rybrick brought forward the payment capacity fees. We brought that forward, we discussed it, received input, and then brought it back. So that's normally how we'll do things. As you're aware, Director Peters, I did just send a fairly thorough outline of actions we hope to be taking over the next about 6 weeks. And it clearly identifies workshop versus general item.
Yeah.
The workshop items are intended to be general in nature. I think where we might be differing in understanding of what's a normal board function is the level of which you're wanting to participate in the details, which are more on the operational side, as opposed to boards, which are policy, strategy, and financial oversight. And it's really important right now that we elevate up to that level, because the more that I've been here, that's really what has been missing, is real financial oversight, real strategic planning, and kind of that real policy view. And so, you know, we have such great capable staff, you know, we can get into the weeds and take care of those issues. I think that the level of detail and in the weeds and kind of micromanaging that was going on at the committee level, it's just not very productive, and it makes for a very inefficient organization, which is now translated into a lot of the issues that we have now. So my personal recommendation would be that we stick with our current process, and then we can always revisit it again if it's not working out.
So, can I comment? And it's not only for the board members getting in the weeds and operations, it's for our public to understand what we're doing. It's about transparency of our operations and what we do. That was the purpose of the standing committee, is to help the public and the board to understand the workings of the district. That was the purpose of it. So the public, I don't think the public has even seen this proposed how the hydro work chart is going to actually look like. No one's seen this, and the public, it's not just the board represents the public. We're here as our public servants. We're here to represent our public and help our public understand what we're doing. And so these committee meetings, by explaining and having more transparency on what we're doing, it's not getting in the weeds, it's helping the public understand where their money is being spent and what's going on.
So all organizational structures are always housed on the website, and then we will include that into the minutes for the meeting.
Right. But we couldn't discuss it because we didn't have
Paul,
it.
have you weighed in? You want to weigh in?
Well,
I put you on the spot.
no, I'm a commenter, as you know. I think I go back to one of Jennifer's points. We have a difference of perspective, and I do take objection to using the word transparency as if we are not being transparent. I have a real problem with that, because it implies both a lack of diligence on the part of the board and NID management, which I do not believe is in place. And that doesn't mean you could feel differently, but I feel that anything I want to know about the district, that I have access to that information. I also am cognizant that my responsibilities lie in strategy, policy, and financial oversight at a high level. That doesn't mean every expenditure should be within my purview to decide whether it was a wise decision or not. I'm very comfortable with our iterative processes, that we got the position descriptions today, fine, so what? We pulled to BFD. Well, I mean, really,
Are you doing
it's.
that, Chris?
I agree, Karen. I
Yeah,
agree.
I mean, it's like a no big deal. And so I think that there's more like, whoa, I got surprised. That's okay. We all read it, and we all read it within the last 2 days. If someone, I wrote Jennifer at 11 o'clock last night going, I just, I'm not comfortable with this. And she said, okay, cool. Good points. That's what I feel is the interaction. And so I don't want to go back to anything like the committee structure, because I think it was a complete waste of management's time.
I don't either.
And I think that, I think we just have to give the workshop time to evolve. And I'm bowled over by what has been presented in the next 6 weeks of agendas. The district finance water line extensions, different policies that we've brought up, all coming forth. But I mean, I think what's happened over these last 6 months has been laying a foundation for, do we all understand what's happening in engineering and in water ops and et cetera? So I don't see where we're missing. And again, I feel very strongly that it's inappropriate from my vantage point to imply that our district is not being transparent with us as a board or with the public.
That's offensive.
It is offensive.
I'm not implying that. I'm saying that we should toot our horn. We should say where we're going, what's going on. We should have open conversations. I think that I'm 100% for these workshops, and I'm really grateful for that schedule to look at these policies, because I think policies, we should discuss these policies and get them on workshops. And I think, I'm not opposed, I'm not at all advocating to go back to standing committee. I completely agree, it was a waste of time, because everything had to come back.
So we have consensus then?
Yeah, we do have consensus.
Mhm.
We are gonna continue. And this came out, with this schedule came out after I requested this item.
I had actually sent a schedule out previous to that. It seemed like you probably didn't get it.
Yeah, I don't know, I just got it a couple.
I can resend it back to you.
I got it a couple days ago, but
No, I sent you one prior to that as well.
Okay.
I just think, Laura, that it's okay to have this iterative and evolving nature of this board conversation, and that's reflective of health. And I think management sometimes is gonna move in a direction where, like the example Chris pointed out, it's like, ooh, we would have benefited from understanding something more. Fine, it's no big deal.
yeah.
But it's, I just would encourage us to support and evolve with the process that's happening.
I'm very encouraged. I'm encouraged, and I would like to evolve with the process.
Yeah. Push on.
Yeah.
All right, so direction is to stay as we are.
On
Mr.
course,
Wagner.
you bet.
Stay the course, right?
First off, I really like the workshop format. I think it needs to evolve a little bit, and we've talked about, I think one of I observed one of the challenges is, in our mind, your mind, my mind, your mind, what should go on consent agenda, what should be a general order, what should go to a workshop first, okay?
Right.
We've been talking about, Karen and Jennifer have talked about that already. That will be evolving. How much information needs to be presented, I think there's a big disagreement on whether it's called transparency or not. I disagree wholly that getting into the minutia or the weeds or whatever you want to call it, not unlike our discussion earlier today, is not warranted at this level or a general order item. That we can, and we have been here long enough. And I think, and an example I'll use is the CIP we did. I am so thrilled with how that went down. I'm totally comfortable with consent agenda for all of the items that they will budget, that are budgeted, being on the consent agenda, for instance. We never need to talk about those accounts. The expenditure of that money does not need to come to the general order to do that project. We had that workshop. It was great. It's all lined out. It's all budgeted. Bam, it's done.
Right, right. I agree, Chris. Mhm.
And all of these things, including the South Yuba Canal, we've been talking about this for 4 years here. This is not new today. Doesn't need, it didn't need we already ran it through a workshop, right? That, with some tweaks, will be, way more effective and efficient than the committees were. When I was an advocate of the workshop, because I was one of those that didn't, I had to go to the engineering committee on my own to get information before we voted. And that's an example of the efficiency that's built into the workshop. I don't see that, if the public is gonna need to know, details.
So
If they want, they can research it.
you got Michael Hillville.
Okay? Thank you, Rich. Michael Hillwell, do you want to comment?
Yes, thank you very much. Very interesting conversation. I would just like to support the transparency that's taken place in NID over the last, say, 1.5 to 2 years. I used to attend the subcommittee meetings, and they were one of the few places where you could have a conversation with the staff and kind of kick ideas around. So I found them to be beneficial. But I also find your workshop formats to be very beneficial. The only word of caution I would have was that your general manager pointed out that ad hoc committees are not subject to the Brown Act. What that means is that no agenda is posted 72 hours in advance of a meeting. What that means is that the public doesn't know that there is a meeting necessarily, let alone what the agenda is. So the public doesn't know whether to participate in the meeting or not because they don't know whether it exists or not, or if there's a topic that's of interest to them. So I would caution you to be careful in using ad hoc committees. I know when I was on the local Board of Education, we rarely used an ad hoc committee for that very reason, because we had parents and staff who were interested in participating in the process. And the Brown Act is what ensures that they know to participate. So I would, just that word of caution, but I would also urge you to continue the workshop format because I've learned a lot in the last few months. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
But anyone else in the public, I'd like to comment at this time on this discussion about standing committees. Start on your phone. Okay.
Do you want to talk about South Sutter?
Yes, we're going to talk about,
So if I may build on Mr. Hillwell's point, because it's a good one. The ad hoc committee is an exception, not the rule. And in this particular case, limited function, it will be limited duration. It's to involve a committee of the board in discussion with a committee of a neighboring water district on a matter of pending litigation to attempt to resolve that litigation. So in this particular instance, this is not a matter where the public would ever be involved. If this matter came to the full board, it would be in closed session. Yep. And it will be, when we do bring it back at a future date. At some point, if there is resolution of this matter, then it becomes an open session item. There's a discussion about it. The public is involved at that point. There's actually not a legal requirement on establishment of an ad hoc committee. Some districts, it's the prerogative of the chair to create it and appoint it. We've agendized it so you can discuss it. I don't recall, looking at staff here, I don't recall us doing this in the past, how we have a tradition, in other words. how we've created these, or?
Probably started my new tradition.
I propose for the board's information that
Yep.
we do.
Per policy, the president can appoint the members, however, I'm open to, however, Mr. Beerwagen would like to do
And I
it.
think our record will show that we did use ad hoc very judiciously and for intended purpose for one item, i.e. when we hired the general manager, we used an ad hoc committee for that.
And they'll come and go. If I recall, the water rates, the labor are sort of a standing ad hoc where they come and go. They show up enough times because we go through labor negotiations every couple years or so. So they just sort of live on this policy, so we don't have to come back every couple years and revise.
Now, I would recommend, just to dovetail off of Mr. Hillwell's comments, that it does seem to be appropriate when we're using an ad hoc committee to review water rates, for example, and we're kind of getting into the real detailed conversations. Those are appropriately open to the public, and in the past they have been. So just because something is ad hoc, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not open to the public either. You know, there are very appropriate times in which it should be open to the public. But as Mr. Cooper just stated, for example, the South Center Water District Ad hoc Committee, that wouldn't be appropriate to be open to the public because we are entering into settlement discussions, and there is essentially a non-disclosure agreement associated with all legal settlement discussions. Is that in the right agreement?
So we have direction?
What?
We have direction?
We have direction.
So the direction is to stay with the committees as they are. Does the board desire a policy change at this time, or do you want the policy change, the committee policy to stay? Standing committees.
Standing committees.
We can leave it and revisit it later?
As last time, the super mentioned was that just because it's our policy, we can keep it if we decide, but I don't think we need them. I think standing committees, I don't think they work.
I'll second that.
Change of policy, in other words.
Well, technically, you would just be getting rid of the, committee, because you don't need a policy for an ad hoc committee. We can do that simply by resolution.
So do you need this policy at all?
No, you can get rid of the whole policy.
Get rid of the whole policy, just,
We can bring back the policy at a later workshop. We'll put it on the list.
there we go.
So are you gonna appoint the ad hoc committee?
Yes,
Would you like to do that now, or would you like to do that offline?
offline.
Okay.
Yeah. And report back.
Like by next time or something?
Yes, or something.
Okay.
I hadn't thought about that part, but, because we got to get through this part, so, yeah.
Well
All right.
done.
Any further more discussion? All right, item number 7.
Okay.
Redistricting. No,
Seven.
it's,
Regional group participation.
yes, that one, thank you.
Yeah.
I found it.
Oh, yeah.
So this was
Regional
a,
group participation, great, go ahead.
sorry,
I was, yeah.
no worries. So this was an item that was brought forth, I'm not exactly sure how it was brought forth, but we do have existing organizations that NID has worked with and has participated in over the years. We kind of have a number of different regional organizations that we have historically been a member of, and they provide us value. They provide the district value through different ways: policy, regional collaboration, grant writing, grant assistance, regional coordination with NGOs and other similar water agencies and municipalities within our region. This item is here today just to discuss. Staff has a recommendation on the organizations. We have a little bit left in the budget for 2022. We already have devised membership with 2 of the 5 organizations that are on this list. 6. And that is AQUA, the Association of California Water Agencies, as well as California Special District Association. AQUA historically has provided the district with a number of regulatory and legislative recommendations, advisories, organizational actions, and alerts. We have gone to their organizational aqua conferences over the years, and they've provided staff and the board a number of good and solid updates to California water policy, California action on water issues. They have a regional committee structure, as we go back to the word committee structure, but they are sort of regionalized within, I believe, 7 regions within California, and we participate on those through advisory committee and advisory attendance. So in the past, I believe Director Peters has been on one of the committee structures in terms of the regional leadership group. In the past, our general manager has been on those leadership groups within our Northern California region within the Aqua. So it provides us with direct access to local agencies, local governments that are interested and concerned about water policy, water issues within California. And so they provide a broad structure. They also have JPIA, which NID is engaged with through our employee dental and vision policies. So we are active within that. It's a great low-cost way that the district can provide its staff with dental and vision care. Secondly, we have paid their annual dues thus far for 2022. That was a $30,770 fee to the Nevada Irrigation District. The California Special District Association is, again, we have paid that due for 2022. These are all contained within a $95,000 budget line item that was approved in December for regional membership dues and associations. CSDA is another organization that the district's been involved in over the years. They provide a lot of education and training for both staff and the board. And so Brown Act training, sexual harassment training, ethics training, all sorts of different online tutorials, as well as in-person organizational meetings when that was happening pre-COVID. I think we're going to get into it. You've seen this booklet with a whole bunch of different educational opportunities that are available to district staff, particularly management staff, as well as the board over the years. So membership forums. They also have a special leadership academy and conferences. So the district over the years has participated in some of those conferences. Some of them are one day, some of them are a couple days, but they provide regional cooperation, collaboration. There is an element of legislative advocacy within CSDA as well. They are pinpointed more in a California-based position through a number of different just special districts. So within their membership is also different special districts beyond just what NID is. So they represent fire districts in some cases, municipal services districts as well. So it's not just water-specific focused, but in general, they're a broad spectrum of different leadership and regional governance structures that we find staff, and I think the board over the years has found very informative and informational, and so we have paid for the 2020 dues there. The 3 other organizations that have membership dues that we still have about $53,000 left in this 2022 budget. Staff has spoken a bit as of last year and more forward into this year with folks at the Regional Water Authority. They are an organization, and probably Jennifer can speak a little bit more detail to the RWA, but in our conversations with their executive director and local outreach and education coordinator, who actually lives here in Grass Valley, they are a regional organization that does also, in our opinion, at the staff level, have a couple different benefits and value that they can bring to the Nevada Irrigation District. NID has never, in my knowledge, been a member of RWA in the past, or at least in the recent past. They have a general geographical focus of Sacramento region, the Sacramento area, and a little bit of overlap within their existing footprint through the Lincoln area where NID district runs down into Lincoln, RWA's current level of influence and sort of their geographical spread goes up into Lincoln and parts of PCWA as well over the north of the American River. RWA has a very consorted communications, education, and outreach component that becoming a member, NID can augment and supplement some of our education and outreach around water efficiency to our constituents. They have a very robust and very detailed and specific organizational structure where their staff is engaged a lot with outreach and education to its constituents throughout mostly the Sacramento region on water efficiency. You hear them on different radio stations, et cetera. Some of their tailored communication strategies are developed at the RWA staff level, and then they're presented to their member district organizations for use. And so we feel that that could be a very effective use for us as we move forward. We do have water efficiency staff, and we have communication staff, but it's limited in scope, and it's limited in scale. And so we can utilize some of the RWA communications opportunities and help augment our existing outreach communications. There is also a grants programs that RWA is engaged with. They have a long history and a long track record of receiving, writing, administering, and grants for many of their membership organizations, and they do that in a pooled way. They get their member organizations to come together and really go after large-scale federal and state grants for infrastructure upgrades or efficiency upgrades or the like. And so through the years, they've received multi-million-dollar grants through their organization, and I think NID can really benefit through their expertise and assistance in defining and identifying various grants that would be available to us. It is not in competition with, nor the board, when we defined the budget for 2022, if you remember, we moved some money into a grants coordinator and a grants assistance for us at the district. We've moved forward with that process in helping to identify and look for grants. It is such a broad world out there of grants. We don't have, a lot of money if we were going to go forward with identification, helping us write grants, helping us even administer or the back end account for grants. If we leave that to, the limited amount of capacity for some of our staff, it just overwhelms our processes. So the RWA grants sort of line item in their budgetary process and in their capacities, we feel can help augment some of that work that we're already engaging with in grants. The Northern California Water Association, or NACWA, is another organization that NID has been involved with in the past. We have not been a membership of NACWA in the recent past. NACWA has, I think, kind of, in my eyes anyway, sort of risen to a very prominency in the discussion around voluntary agreements and unimpaired flows. And Justin, correct me if I'm wrong, but they are engaged a lot at the state level.
And regulatory advocacy.
As well as regulatory advocacy. So there is a lot of benefit that NACWA brings to, I think, our general region in Northern California as a whole. They have a lot of membership base that is in the Sacramento Valley. There's a lot of, focus along the Sacramento River and some of those organizations and special districts and municipalities in the valley floors. That's not to say that NID does not participate with, and we don't want to be understanding what's going on. So we don't want to continue to be a silo within ourselves up in the upper reaches of the headwaters. However, NACWA has done, I think, a really great job reaching out to us specifically in the last couple years and trying to help educate us on VA system, and how we can be involved with that a lot. And so I think they also have a series of relatively low-cost annual meetings, task forces. They have a number of different subcommittees that they invite all to, and so that would be a participation level at the NACWA level.
Before you go on, could you compare and contrast belonging to NACWA versus AQUA? What parts overlap, what parts don't? Because I've pondered this a lot. But okay, NACWA's, and then I always look at the numbers, look at the dollars, right? And go, what's the cost benefit ratio there for belonging? And I go, okay, what would we get that we're not getting from AQUA if we belong to NACWA?
So on a broad spectrum, I think there's nuances, and forgive me, and I don't want to speak on behalf of AQUA or NACWA in terms of their leadership and their complete value. But on a broad spectrum, AQUA is really focused along the lines of treated water systems, the state of California wide. So their membership base is Southern California to Northern California, and a lot of focus along treated water systems and legislative activities around treated water applications. NACWA, more Northern California, which is the NC, Northern California Water Association. And a lot of their focus is around the irrigation water systems. So not necessarily the treated water, but more ag component and irrigation systems and irrigation agencies. So in a broad spectrum, that's a bit about what there's sort of a delineation there. They both, though, are very active in the state legislature. They're both very active in influencing policy and actions, governor's office. They're both very engaged in building collaboration and cooperation amongst agencies and municipalities.
On a daily basis, we rely on NACWA more than AQUA.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
NACWA.
NACWA is extremely focused on water right issues.
Mm-hmm.
AQUA, because it's statewide, has a much broader spectrum that they're kind of monitoring. And in AQUA, this is both good and bad, but because their membership is so diverse, their message ends up getting a little diluted. For example, the water right issue. Well, here in Northern California, we're advocates of water rights. We love water rights. We have water rights. We want to defend water rights. Well, there are other areas in the state that don't have water rights.
And they want our
may
water.
not care so much about water rights. So if AQUA were to present a strong defense of water rights, they would have voices in their membership that would dilute that message.
Mm-hmm.
But they have dental.
Great medical, AQUA JPI is.
And their organization, you know, when you go to their conferences at the AQUA space, they are very diverse. And so staff and board, when you go to those conferences, you have that opportunity to learn from different institutional presentations and priorities. So it really helps kind of define who we are as an organization in the outside space and other organizations to us. And so it gives us also an opportunity to make a case at the state level and at state organizational places when there's a conference, if we have an opportunity to speak our perspective on statewide considerations. So
Hey, Greg.
those are really, yes.
Sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt you. So could you, I mean, what I hear about AQUA is that, you know, the benefits are the medical and dental and going to their conferences for a discount. And I had this conversation with Jen yesterday and I said, well, you know, for $30,000, you could go to a lot of conferences, you know, and I'm I have a bias, you know, that AQUA is, as you stated, you know, very Southern California oriented. They're not, you know, the issue of water rights is, you know, they're not going to take a hard stand defending water rights, and that we are you know, we're in Northern California, we're at the headwaters, and that if we had to choose between Aqua and Naqua, I would absolutely choose Naqua because I think they represent our interests. And we could still maybe go to an Aqua conference here and there when it was appropriate, and you know, we could send a couple people for a whole lot less than $30,000. So you know, that's kind of my thinking, but I might not be right in my thinking. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to address what I'm not thinking clearly about.
The only issue I foresee is the participation in the JPA for vision and dental insurance. There are other options. We'd have to sort those out. Dustin and I both think that you need to be a member of Aqua to participate in those programs.
Do they have an affiliate membership, like something less than, you know, like you can have a full member or you can be affiliate member? No?
I'm confused about are we receiving dental and?
They were purchasing it through a pool, basically.
And CalPERS doesn't have that?
Yeah, that's my question.
No, most entities,
Huh.
cities and counties a lot purchase through Placer County. You know, that could be an option you could go through on your own. You get better rates when you're pooled because
Right.
your risk is leveraged over more people. So we'd have to figure it out.
And they're using fluoride down in LA.
Well, you know, a lot of the dentists in our area have stopped taking Delta Dental, which is the only choice, I think, through their JPIA. And so then it makes me wonder the real value of it. You know, maybe look around for some other benefits, but I'll bet that's all tied into our MOU, right? So it's not as simple as I would like it to be.
Yeah, it's not necessarily completely as simple, and we can certainly look into it. Part of this presentation and this discussion, I think, is to get your input. As we move forward, we have, like I said, we have invested in Aqua at this point in 2022. We will certainly take a review of it, and we can look into the dental process.
Yeah, we could take a look.
And look and see if that statement that you just made, which is where the dental is not being taken here. I haven't heard that through our staff, and
You should ask, because yeah, they're not taking, most dentists up here are not taking Delta Dental. They stopped about 6 months ago. And when, gosh, I can't remember her name, who was our HR person, I brought it up to her and she said, oh yeah, she'd heard that through a lot of folks that, you know, it's kind of a mess, the Delta Dental thing up here. But then I think, well, what about the county? The county offers medical, you know, has dental. I don't know what Nevada County's pool is, but anyway, well, I'm getting off topic, and I was just trying to look for a way to save some money and put our resources where we will get the biggest return for our very specific issues of water rights, Northern California water, headwaters, and so on. So
I do want to correct, though, I don't believe that I said that Aqua is Southern California focused. It is.
No, I said it was my bias.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's been a member of Aqua forever, as long as I know, right?
You know,
Dental part.
Probably.
It's probably not the
Before
sole reason.
before about 1980, it used to be the California Association of Irrigation Districts.
Yes.
And I've heard some of the stories from the older guys in the office that NID was a very prominent member.
Yes, they were.
For decades in the Irrigation District Association. So,
They were taken in by Aqua?
so they changed the name. It was the same core entities, but, you know, there's more water districts than just irrigation districts. They wanted to change the name to more diversity of membership.
The last, the other two here, both next ones, Mountain Counties Water Resources Association is an organization that NID had been a part of in the past. I think 2019 was the last time we paid the dues. We then walked out of Mountain Counties around that time and haven't been back. They have a clear education and legislative advocacy agenda. In the packet is a map of sort of their area from Mono and Mariposa counties in the south up to Plymouth, They're pretty hyper-focused on the headwaters regions of the Sierra Nevada.
And forestry issues, correct?
Forestry issues, there was a lot of collaboration with CAL FIRE, a lot of different regional collaboration, sort of trying to piece together mountain water and county concerns around how do we take care of our resources. So they've had some leadership change in the last couple of years. Their executive officer, has been around for a long time, John Kingsbury, moved on about a year ago. They do have a new executive officer as of, I want to say, September or October of last year. I haven't met the individual, but they have been I think over the years, a general regional collaboration organization, not unlike that we couldn't find in any of these other organizations, however. So I think there's some overlap. I think from staff's perspective, the value and the organizational need that we can get from one organization such as Mountain Counties isn't well thought about and taken care of within a combination of NACWA, RWA, as well as in the statewide of AQUA. The last item here is the Consume This American Bear Yuba. We've talked about CABI. CABI is no cost to the district. CABI is an organization through DWR, where it was created as an IRWMP, Integrated Regional Water Management Plan. It lumped the Consume This American Bear and Yuba regions together, which constitute about 130 different organizations, NGOs, and agencies. NID has been a agency leader within that CABI group for a number of years. We brought forth, you saw the organization governance structure. We are supplying a staff member to that organization governance structure and have been for the last 7 or 8 years. And so that is an organization. The only way that we are paying for that is about 3 or 4 hours now of staff time per quarter, where they get together and we talk about there's opportunities for grants specifically through DWR, and there's a very narrow focus of grants and very limited amount of money that this organization can really go after with any real teeth. There's no staff member involved in this, and there's no organizational structure per se. It's just a loose-knit group of many different voices through a very broad spectrum of regional collaboration.
Greg, hasn't NID benefited to about $3 or $4 million in grants through CABI? 5 million?
About 5 million.
Yeah.
About 5 million.
And at no cost, so it's kind of a thing.
Yeah, it's been great, and like I say, it has limitations because really those monies were available through DWR through the IRWMP program. And that budget line item at DWR has dwindled over the years, and so that money right now is just not there. It was 5 or 6 years ago for water efficiency, and I think the Mead Canal is one of the ones that we encased. We talked about that not long ago. That CABI money helped in the development of that. So yeah, and that's why we want to keep with it. It's a regional group that we I think have benefited from in the past and may continue to benefit from, and it really is not a big it's not a big capacity issue for us.
Peter's had a question.
Yeah, not a question, but a comment. A couple of things. On the CABI, I agree. We don't have to put a lot into it, and we do get good back from it. And a lot of the other programs, even though it's not state money dedicated to integrated regional water management, other programs say in order to be eligible for this funding in this other program, you have to participate. You have to
That's right.
participate in integrated. So even though it doesn't seem and it's no cost, and so I think that's a very good organization to participate in and be a part of. And then with regard to the mountain counties, one thing you didn't mention that I think is kind of important. On the mountain counties, the Naqua and Aqua, and, those are the other two, right, Naqua and Aqua. They're water district centric. The only members are water district, irrigation district. Where in mountain counties, it's all the electeds in all of those counties. It's supervisors, and so it's a broader group of electeds that are looking to headwater issues and that can make the decisions of where headwaters, what's happening in the headwaters from both a county perspective as well as water supply perspective. So I wanted to just bring that up. I think that there's good value for that.
That's a good point, Laura. Yeah.
Starting to Napa, I agree with you, Ricky. I think that, you know, if we could figure out the dental and that, perhaps Napa would be better. But since we've already paid Aqua this year, maybe it'll give us time to look at the dental for next year on that one. But from my perspective, I think there was very good breakdown of how you described them, that worked out really well. But I think that with our limited budget, right now, just go with mountain counties and RWA, because those provide the most direct benefit to our district, and then work on the transition if we so choose to go from Aqua to Napa.
From a staff perspective, I think we feel that we receive greater benefit from Naqua than from Mountain County. If we are concerned about staying within budget. There's always also an budget amendment.
And just a point of clarification, Naqua does have county as members, some counties. But to my knowledge, none of them are also mountain counties.
People, I said more valley centric.
Yeah, Butte County, Tanana County, Shasta County, those.
I think we have a lot more in common with the mountain counties than the valley.
Yeah, currently when we're going through all of the VA negotiations or talking about unimpaired flows, Naqua is spearheading that effort, so we have found great support, and they help us out even though we're not members. I think that it's pretty imperative given the regulatory state that we're in to join Naqua.
I would agree.
We had a great communication plan 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Can I ask something?
Go ahead.
Can I ask something? So when we had the discussion about dropping out of Sigma, there was a lot of talk about an alternative organization. Was that Naqua or was it the RWA that staff was talking about?
Yeah, that was the Regional Water Authority.
The regional. Because see, to me, it makes sense to do RWA, Naqua, Mountain Counties, and Cabby, and let Aqua go do their thing in Southern California.
And just for disclosure, I'm on the Region 3, the Headwaters Director on Aqua, and so I do support Aqua's work. It's not that I don't support Aqua's work. I'm just looking at it from our specific perspective.
From a budget standpoint too.
Budgetary, we need to engage with the outside communities is critically important. And Aqua is a very good organization for statewide, learning what's going on statewide.
Yeah, this is a good overview also for the board to recognize, because I've heard in the past, staff's heard that we tend to focus on our own selves, and clearly within our current mission is to self-determination of our resources. And I think this is an indication that no, we do have fingers out, are working and collaborating and working with these other organizations. And so, is to bring you up to speed on sort of where we are in the process. I think throughout 2022, we can continue to look at what is the Delta, the vision and dental policy consideration that you brought up, Director Head, for the Aqua piece. And I think it's our recommendation and that we kind of move forward with RWA and Naqua at the moment. That keeps us within budget. And we continue to bring this back on sort of an annual cycle.
Yeah, one of the challenges also is we get spread really thin, and so then we're not really utilizing the groups at all.
Right.
There might be some benefit. I do think we should look into Aqua a little bit more for the next year to see if it's something we should continue to do. I frankly haven't paid much attention to Aqua, even when I was at the city. I didn't pay much attention to Aqua. but we do have the dental vision issue. NACWA is, I think, imperative at this point where we're at with the regulatory issues. They have a very, they've organized around Northern California water rights issues specifically, and they're very integral to the continued VA discussions, as well as helping navigate some of those higher political things going on at the governor's office level. So, mountain counties, I think I would propose we maybe wait on that and look into it a little bit more to see what they're doing, what their agendas are. I kind of cruise around their website a little bit. You know, I don't hear a lot coming out from them. I don't hear a lot of action from them, but I could be totally off base on that as well.
I agree, Jennifer. I agree. In fact, it was back, gosh, Chris, you might remember, but it was a couple years ago when we had this discussion, and I was really in favor of dropping out of mountain counties because we didn't get a lot of bang for the buck from there. And and with the leadership change, maybe it will get better, but I think we can monitor it. You know, it seems like a good idea, but I've not seen anything real come out of there yet. But I like the staff's recommendation of NACWA and RWA and CABI. I think CABI is really important.
That was the committee discussion in 2019.
Is that what it was? Okay.
Circle back.
Okay.
So one subject that I have not heard, and that is advocacy at the federal level. And just my viewing lens, Aqua is the best of the entities that are being discussed here. NACWA, I don't know about RWA, but NACWA does have a federal lobbyist on retainer, but they're focused on CDP issues. Aqua's federal lobbying team, I think, is a much broader perspective, much more effective. But when you then drill that down to NID here, we don't frequently have federal issues.
Right.
If we ever did have, infrastructure discussions, that's, we have a lot of infrastructure. We have a lot of need for funding for infrastructure. So there's a potential need there. Or if we ever had some significant disaster like a fire where we're interfacing with FEMA, let me tell you, having a strong federal presence, advocacy would be really helpful in that scenario. But if that were to ever happen, you become a member, or you more likely retain a federal lobbyist directly. So they're representing your interests.
RWA does have a fairly strong advocacy arm to them, and they do federal.
Our budget right now allows for us to be in both. We can be in Aqua and NACWA. So
Yeah.
I think that at this point, I agree. Aqua has a lot of benefits. Don't get me wrong, it's really an excellent source.
So I'm hearing consensus on Aqua, CSDA.
I've had my hand up for a while.
I'm sorry, I didn't
It's
see
all right.
your hand.
But I will agree, NACWA and RWA and CABI, but I'd like to bring up also Family Water Alliance. They get a lot of money, grant money for fish screens.
Oh.
Yeah.
And
Grant, but they get it. These guys are very active. Well, Ashley lives in Lincoln.
yeah, one of my neighbors. And I have not had the opportunity to connect with Ashley, so let me connect with her and see if that is on a membership basis or on a contractual basis. Sometimes they'll also do things like that, but let me circle up with her.
Okay, I will really, I like them. They are strong advocates for Northern California.
For agricultural water projects.
And they get things done.
More than NACWA, you think?
I think it's a little bit different. This is more kind of on the grant writing and navigating project-related impacts as opposed to district and water rate-related impacts. I don't know their membership structure. I don't know fee structure, so that one I'll have to look into.
Is it a state organization, Northern California, or what?
Northern California.
Yeah, I think they're Northern California.
Yeah, I mean, you see a lot of influence, all the way from Roseville all the way through Chico area. Our toys,
Okay, now Jennifer, now.
all the backcountry.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think, we received direction, I don't believe that this takes formal action, because the funds already budgeted and, we can go ahead and join these. So we've already joined Aqua and CSDA for this year, so we will join RWA and NACWA. We will take a further look at mountain counties, we'll continue to participate in CABI, and we'll take a look at Family Water Alliance.
Okay.
Perfect.
Go.
And her husband's at Chamber of Commerce.
Good job.
Yeah. He's also a caterer,
Oh, really?
and he restores all cars.
He's 1 block away.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
sounds like a barbecue.
Thank you, board. Thank you. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg.
At this time, we'll take a short break before we move on to redistricting. Short break. All right, we're back in session. Item number 8, redistricting. Jennifer.
All right, I will introduce the item, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Paul Mitchell. As the board is aware, this is the item regarding redistricting. Redistricting is required to be completed every time that there is a new census. There are also some other requirements under which you could redistrict as a special district in the government code. Is it election code or government code? Related to population growth, whether it exceeds 20% or not or more. As you'll recall, this is our 4th or 5th meeting regarding redistricting. At the last meeting, there was a request to add 1 additional map, which has been added for your consideration. So this meeting, the presentation will be very short, and then we will look to the board to select a a map to vote on.
And your video's not on, Jennifer.
My video's not on.
No.
I'm a talking voice. Okay.
Say, what is it? There we go. Thank you.
All right, Paul, you want to get started?
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me. I'm going to go ahead and start with the PowerPoint presentation. I'll try and be brief, but this is good not just for you, but also for any members of the public that are potentially watching this and maybe looking at this for the first time. So everybody can see my screen, I presume. Ricky, you can tell me we're good? Thanks.
Yes, I can see it. Great.
Perfect. You're the person I see right now. So I just
Oh, okay.
give you a nod. That was great. Thanks. Redistricting is a process that we undergo every 10 years in order to adjust for the population changes. As we know, in California, the state grew by 6%, not as fast as the rest of the country, but still grew. And then throughout the state, there were different rates of growth. Some places really ballooned in new housing and new population. Other places had significant reductions in the population. And that unequal rate of growth around the state creates a situation where in a districted election system where, 10 or 20 years ago, the last time an agency redistricted, all those districts were relatively equally balanced, that differential rate of growth throughout the agency will cause one district maybe to be a lot larger than another district in terms of total population. When we redraw districts, that closing up the total population gap is the most important first start. It's about making districts be relatively equal sized. In local redistricting, we're allowed a 10% deviation, meaning that the largest district can be 10% larger than the smallest district. In a fictional district situation where you had every district was supposed to be 100 people, that would mean that the total deviation between districts could be 10 people. And so you might have one district that's at 95 and another district that's at 105, and that would be fine. You could even have one district at 92 if all the other districts are at 102. That's still the 10% difference. So keeping districts relatively equal size is kind of the first task. In doing that, we need to also make sure that we're following all state, federal, any local rules. Drawing districts contiguous, meaning that they need to be whole parts. Maintaining communities of interest, which can include the next category, which is kind of cities, county boundaries, governmental lines, but it also can include areas where you might have unique communities that have different needs. So you might have different services that you provide in different parts of the district, or different residents having kind of a community to themselves that's more of a mountain community, more of an urban community. So those kinds of things can come into play when you're determining where to draw these boundaries. And then keeping districts compact isn't really about keeping them small. You're going to have districts that are square mileage, a lot larger than other agencies. But it is about making sure that your districts are somewhat circle and square-like, keep nearby populations together. You don't want to have districts that look like, 4 octopuses all hugging with weird arms going everywhere and everything like that. So that's what we've tried to do in each of these draft plans. I will note that all of these draft plans would be, in our view, acceptable and meeting all of the criteria that you need to follow. So let's look first at your existing lines. The existing lines have a lot of what we call islands, which are areas that are not a part of the agency that kind of like dot a lot of the area. That's normal for a lot of special districts. It does create a little bit of more of a challenge from the redistricting perspective in terms of working with the census geography that's required, but that we will be able to handle. When we look at the data for each of these districts, the thing that jumps out is that you have Division 4, which if we look back at the map, is this southern division, which includes Auburn, Lincoln areas. That Division 4 is 22% too large. 32. And Division 2 is 10% too small. So this district here, the yellow one, is underpopulated based on what should be its ideal size. So you're going to have basically a third of a district in total difference between the largest and smallest district. That's way too much. And so closing that gap is going to require significant changes. And because these districts aren't like adjacent to each other, you can't just like move the population between the two. It's going to have ripple effects throughout almost the entire agency. When we have done these, we started with A, B, and C, which were draft plans that we created utilizing traditional criteria and our expertise in the line drawing process to try to come up with some alternatives that seemed to make sense from the data that we had. As a result of those, we got some really informative feedback. All that information, all that hearing, all that details were in the prior hearing, so we have that on the record. But we ended up doing a thing which we've seen in other agencies, but we took, okay, we want to take the northern 3 districts and these southern 2 districts from a different plan and kind of merge them together to graft 2 parts of different plans together to create a new plan. And so Plan D and E are both kind of hybrids. D uses part of B and part of C, and E uses part of A and part of B. So that allows us to have, I think, a good range of plans to look at. The minimal change plan is, as it says, trying to just kind of make some nips and tucks as much as possible to deal with these population changes. Remember I said that that district of the south that included Lincoln was the one that was so overpopulated? You can see that that district really drops. When we look at the deviation, 1.3% total plan deviation is well within the requirement. And you can see on this map, the dark line is the new boundary of this plan. The shaded area by color is the existing line. So you can see how much that southern district basically is cut in half in terms of its physical geography. That was in order to reduce the population by about 20%. District 3 drops a little bit as well. District 2, remember that one had to change as well, but that one kind of compresses its physical footprint while it's actually adding population because of where it's going into more densely populated areas. And districts 1 and 5 are similar in footprint. District 1 is, I think, throughout the redistricting process, when we look at all these, District 1's the one that doesn't always change that much. We have the same layout where you can see where the cities are and how those were related. B was trying to unify the cities, and you can see specifically up here in Grass Valley, we went around the city of Grass Valley into areas that you, as your agency, represent. and took in every little bit of the city of Grass Valley to put that all in District 1. So that changes the construct here. And then everywhere else, we tried to follow city boundaries. Deviation of 6%, which is fine. 6% deviation, 1% deviation. As long as it's under that 10%, then you're fine. It's more of a threshold test than, saying that a lower deviation is by some way, better. B was the existing lines you can see here, and then the city overlay again. Draft map C was a revision of A. So again, same kind of footprint. See this southern district, instead of being all the way down, it kind of is more up on one side to the county border. Deviation of 1.9. Existing lines, you can see that it follows the existing lines, this most southern district on the county border, but then does have to kind of shrink its footprint to lose population. 2 gets kind of tucked up like it did in draft plan A. 1 is pretty much the same as it was in the prior plan, and same with 5. Now, where we start to get into the plans that were done at public hearings to kind of like try to address some concerns, this draft plan D is a hybrid of B and C. So we took the top portion of B and the bottom portion of C, I believe. And the total plan deviation is 6.2%. And you can see how this plan looks compared to the existing lines. And you can see the way that these cities of Grass Valley, Alta Sierra, North Auburn are all kind of, the lines are kind of hugging around those in order to follow city boundaries. After we saw this, there was some discussion back and forth, and the decision was to try to bring back a new plan that would be a revision of A and B, so that we could see what that would look like. And this is the plan there. Essentially, again, based on B, the keeping with the city boundaries, this Alta Sierra and Grass Valley kind of lines being followed. But then now the southern boundary is different on this plan. So this plan has a different, that shape that is from C, which is similar to A on that southern boundary. Draft plan E has a deviation of 6.2%. Here's again the overlap with existing lines. And the overlap with city is informative too. You can see again, Grass Valley, Alta Sierra, North Auburn boundaries all being protected. And then here, Sheridan and that north boundary. This district doesn't come all the way up to the county border like it did on the other one. It kind of tucks down in here. So where we're at is we've done draft map presentation, a plan revision meeting, and now we're in a position to, if you are able to adopt one of these plans as your plan, your redistricting plan for the next decade. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions and be of any assistance you need.
Thank you, Paul. Who proposed the plan for the revision key? Who initiated that? Would you like to elaborate now?
Sure. Well, for me, I guess from our conversations, there didn't seem to be much disagreement between, for the changes made in divisions 1, 2, and 5. Right. And so the real question was what's the best configuration for divisions 3 and 4? And when I looked at map A originally, that seemed to me to be the most logical constellation or configuration for divisions 3 and 4, based on the way the two divisions span that geographic area. I also felt that when we look at growth within the district, we know that the primary growth is going to be taking place in southern Placer County.
Oh, that, I agree with that point, yeah, that's the point, yeah. Go ahead.
And so, for me, map E presents a more strategic look at how the district would be, how the various divisions would be constituted, keeping, I think, in mind that we're probably going to have more changes coming forth in the next census, and that from a kind of those boundary lines between 3 and 4, I think we're going to see 4 continue to shrink in size, while 3 will have to continue to drop down. And so, to me, map E represented a logical flow of redistricting now and into the future. So that's why I suggested that we would want to look at that as a possibility.
And in Census Division 4, we were an irrigation district. We were primarily agriculture, and to make a division where pretty much mostly urban and most of the population receive their water through PCWA. Most of the people in there receive their water through PCWA. And so to keep Division 4, to have that rural, a finger on the pulse of the rural, I think map D makes more sense, because the actual D, because there is going to be growth, but there's also going to be a lot of growth in Penn Valley and Division 5. I think that there's opportunity for growth out there. So I don't know if we've projected the growth, and I know that the growth is in Lincoln. A lot of it's in Sunsteady, I mean west of East Roseville or west of Highway 5, which is not in the division. I think there's limited growth that's actually in our division. There's Nicholas growth, there's the growth, I don't know what the growth is actually in.
There is, so Village 1 and what is it, Village 2 are all within the NID service territory. It's about 7,000 homes.
Over how long?
So Village 1 will probably build out over the next, phase 1, maybe 10 years. Phase 2.
Where do they get their water from?
They're in NID service territory, so that's when we sell water to to PCWA, who wheels it to the city of Lincoln. They're the retail water purveyor.
Right.
So that whole division would become, mostly Lincoln, that it would not have any rural,
The population, once Village 1 grows out, there's going to be some fairly significant changes to our map, because, in those areas, there is some active adults, so the population will be a little bit lower than probably the 2.5 per house, people per house. Slightly. So Village 1, if you, 193, so north and south of 193.
north and south.
Wow.
Yep, so it basically goes 193 south, to Lincoln Hills, and then it goes 193 north, all the way up to Wise Road, doesn't it?
Well, no, one's Virginia Town.
Virginia Town?
North of Virginia Town is Village 2.
That's Village 2.
So they're going
And
to
a
be
portion of Village 2 is
Village
building up.
2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, so Village 5 is gonna go, fairly soon. That is on the other side of 65. So the
Wow.
villages that are within NID service territory are Villages 1 and 2.
Okay.
So anyway, so I don't think that growth is gonna make a huge difference in the next 10 years.
The growth will make a huge difference in the next 10 years for the standard
7,000
deviation.
homes.
Yeah.
So not all those 7.
So you probably have about 3,000 homes realistically in the next 10 years
North of 193?
in the NID service territory. So figure, it's a little bit lower population than normally. Population projections are 2.8 per household, but there's more active adult there, so probably be a little bit lower. You can even just call it 2 people. So you're looking at least 5, but it's reasonable to assume between 5 and 10,000 people.
Paul, is it possible to put the 2 maps that they're talking about, D and E, side by side?
Yeah, give me a second. I can set that up, and then I can share my screen with that.
Yeah, I think
Talking
that would
about
be
D and E, right?
helpful. Is that what you're talking about, Laura, and you're talking about Karen? D and E?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, D and E.
Okay.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to see them side by side.
I'll start by just showing it this way. This will show both. I can kind of scroll back and forth between the two maps this way. So this is Plan D and this is Plan E.
Mm-hmm.
So D and E both have the same construction of 1, 2, and 5. The big difference is if you look at Plan D, it follows the county boundary here.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go to E, it just drops it down.
So where's the county boundary on E?
Right here. The county boundary on E would be kind of along this line, right?
I see. Okay.
So
And
it
then
cuts right
where,
through three.
and then where is the watershed? You know, like, I mean, one of the things I was looking at in these is, you know, is the division of, you know, the Bear and Deer Creek, which are our two primary surface water. And I was just trying to figure out where the Bear River is, since we're really talking about 3 and 4. Where is the Bear in there?
Let me see. I can also bring up a web map that might show that a little bit better. So let me look at if E's web map will help.
Because see, Rich, what you and I have, we share Deer Creek, right? Yes. And then the Bear is in Chris's, in Division 2, going through Division 3. And does the Bear go also through Division 4? I was just kind of curious to look at it from that watershed perspective.
But you're going to be more familiar with, so this is Lake of the Pines here in 3.
Mm-hmm.
This over here is
Camp Far West.
Camp Far.
Look
Yeah,
at
that's
Camp
Camp-
Far West.
Okay, that's what that is.
Kind of goes from Camp Far West and Lake of the.
Bear River's right here.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
So Bear River is
It's mostly in Division 3.
Plan E, it's entirely in Division 3.
Uh-huh.
And in Plan D, you'll see that it's actually the dividing line is Bear River.
Oh, that's interesting.
For a while.
For a while, not the whole way, yeah.
Okay.
Most of the way.
It's just, it was another data point to, I was just looking at it from that perspective. Does anybody have any feeling about the watershed as it relates
Yeah.
to?
Okay, so I think the three things that our guidance is that we have to have a less than 10% deviation, which we do. The other thing is that we need to have like communities. It's easier to represent a like community. And when I look at, and then at 3, no one says it, but you don't want to gerrymander too much or any at all. But when I look at D, it just gets really thin in North Auburn. And whereas in Plan E, it just has much more representation by the same, same director. So I'm leaning towards Plan E. I think it represents what we're, going for down the road. And I certainly love 1, 2, and 5. And I think 3 is mostly, Little Lake of the Pines. But 4 definitely is Lincoln and North Auburn. And it's just going to get smaller and smaller. So we need to take those, I think we need to take that incremental step right now, because that's what it's going to look like down the road with a population increase. So I'm just kind of looking towards Plan E as the one that is most successful.
You have 2 problems. You got subdivisions coming in and irrigated land going out.
Well, hopefully North Lincoln is not going out.
Well, I mean, that's where you build the house.
I don't know. Yeah, interesting.
Any more public comment or any more comment?
This is a public hearing. When the board is ready, we do need to conduct a public hearing.
Yes, can you refresh my memory of the difference between having the public hearing and an agendized item? What's the difference?
Magic words and bang the gavel.
Bang the gavel.
And it's not, my recommendation is it's not a discussion.
Okay.
We can receive the comment, then once you close the public
It's
hearing.
not a discussion.
Correct.
Yeah, not back and forth.
Oh, back and forth.
You're to be taking testimony.
Okay,
Correct.
all right. Should we do that this time? Think?
My biggest concern is that Division 4 is only gonna be representing people at PCWA and City of Lincoln. Maybe we don't need a Division 4, maybe you should go to three divisions. Maybe just go to 4 divisions, just get rid of it.
There's an idea.
That doesn't
Well,
make
but
any
that is-
sense. You gotta have
Yeah,
5
you would've-
directors.
I need odd number of directors for
Yeah.
decision-making.
Yeah.
The board director wouldn't have anything in common with any of the other divisions, because it's only representing people that are getting
Yeah, but they need,
wholesale waters and.
They need
treated waters and-
representation. Those folks
Right.
need representation.
Yeah, they're a significant contributor to property tax.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
and ma'am,
Ma'am, yes, ma'am.
so we'll go, open the public hearing at this time. Any member of the public like to, comment on redistricting? Start on your phone at this time.
And maybe Paul can stop sharing his screen for a moment so we can
Oh,
view.
that would be good. Paul, did you hear that?
Right, it's hard for me to hear everything.
Can you stop sharing your screen for one moment,
Oh,
Paul?
yeah, so sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, here we go. All right, so anybody in the public like to comment today on redistricting process we're going through? Turn on your phone?
In your gavel?
No, I didn't bang it. I thought that was recorded. I thought it was-
Open the public hearing.
so,
Open the public hearing at this time. Anybody like to comment today? Start on your phone. Okay, last chance for public hearing. All right, public hearing is closed.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
Ready? So how do you want this? You want the whereases?
Well, the motion is to adopt resolution 2022-12.
Right.
Blank in the resolution.
So you want it back here,
Now
yeah.
therefore,
Yep.
paragraph number 2, where you need to identify what draft has.
Okay. So I move to adopt resolution number 2022-12 of the Board of Directors of Nevada Irrigation District, and now therefore be it hereby resolved by the Board of Directors of Nevada Irrigation District. 1, the above recitals are true and correct and are adopted herein as findings of the Board of Directors. 2, having considered public testimony and concluded public hearings, the board determines and hereby adopts draft map E as an echo as its final map, attached hereto as Exhibit A, the final map. 3, pursuant to Elections Code Section 22002, the effective date of this adjustment of division boundaries is the date of passage of this resolution. And 4, the general manager is authorized and directed to execute appropriate documents, if any, to satisfy and implement this adjustment of division boundaries consistent with the final map for Nevada Irrigation District.
I'd second that.
Is that your second?
Yes, you did.
Okay. Any, further discussion from the board? Moved and seconded to adopt map E by resolution. No further discussion. Madam Secretary, you call the roll, please.
Division 4,
No.
Division 1,
Yes.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 2.
Aye. Thank you very much. Thank you, Paul, for good work.
Thank you. We'll process these files with the county and work with Chris on any, so we can obtain the minutes of the hearing and the vote, because they'll want to see that as well. And we'll take care of it, both the county registrars, and you'll be set for your next election.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Darn, right?
Bad.
Okay. That brings us to general manager's report.
Thank you, President Beerwagon. I'm going to do a couple of real quick items. Just wanted to announce that Greg and Doug and it was actually Doug's team, good job, Tanya, very successful in getting $1.5 million for Hemp Hill. So that's big kudos to them. So this year, how much money are we up to in grants so far, the past couple of months?
Implementing, that would be 1.5, and then English Meadows is another 1.1. Both
Yeah.
of those are from the Water Conservation Board, so thank you to them.
Good job.
And then we're still working on CFIP for another $700,000.
Oh, that's great.
Nearly 4 million.
Is there any bass in Hemp Hill and Auburn Ravine?
Bass?
Yeah.
Salmon.
There's
No,
salmon.
but bass are notorious salmon eaters.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. You guys are smart fishermen.
Instead of the smell.
Yeah, they eat everything. That's why we don't have a whole lot of salmon. One of the reasons.
All right, and then I did want to report out to the board that I did have the opportunity to attend the Penn Valley MAC, and it was great. Great group. They had a lot of really interesting questions. I hope to be able to come back again. I think we're winning some people over into the water side to become more and more educated, and they seem real excited.
Yeah, I think they want Jennifer on a regular basis.
They're fun.
Regular Mrs. Basil.
And then tonight, I'm actually going to do the South County MAC. So that will be my first time with that group. What I've been doing is just providing an overview. I always steal Chip's wonderful water supply slides, and he teaches me everything he knows. So everyone always loves weather, so do I. And then we'll talk about the plan for water process and invite them to participate. And then the only other thing I had was to turn it over to Chip, because I know we're all curious. How are we doing?
I'm doing fine personally.
I'd like more water, please. That'll be better if you have good news.
Okay, so we're gonna do a bit of an abbreviated water supply update. I plan on bringing the full forecast at the next board meeting and really dive into it. But here's where we sit as of the second. We're at 44.43 inches of precipitation. And you'll notice that we have finally crossed over that line where we're now below 100%, because we just haven't had anything. It's been ridiculously dry. So we're at 91% of average for this time of year. Really hope that winter's not over, but we will see. NID reservoir storage sits at 195,824 acre feet, which is 94% of the 8-year average. The slope on our reservoirs filling is a little bit telling in that, we kind of matched years past. You can see this last little bit started to turn.
Sure.
And that's a combination of a couple things. One is snow melt was occurring. It got cold and dried up some of the snow melts. But also, there's not as much snow melt occurring either. So, because some of the sunny areas have already melted off, and the other areas are just frozen. So, more to come. Regarding that particular topic, we did complete our March 1st snow survey. Our historical average is 27.9 inches of water content, but we're now down to 23.8, so 85% of average. Not great, not horrible. But we keep our fingers crossed for more.
But it takes a certain amount of snow melt to generate runoff.
Yeah, that's correct.
And so we might be down, but then we're going to lose a bunch of that.
Yes.
Last
year, we had a pretty decent snowpack, but we only saw, I think, 45% of recovery of it. This year, the Sierra, I forget their name, the Sierra Snow Survey folks have done soil samples, and they have said that the moisture content of the underlying soil is much wetter this year than it was last. So they're anticipating a better snow melt this year, but it's still not great. And I think they're anticipating somewhere in that 65 to 70%. So we'll see.
Versus last year, Chip?
Versus last year.
And what was it last year?
45%.
45, okay, thank you.
The one thing is, we actually have some rain in the forecast. I hope I don't jinx it by throwing this up here. And it's not much, honestly, but at this point, doggone it, I'll take whatever we can get.
Exactly.
And I forgot to bring up that very first slide about the precipitation at Bowman. It didn't have that last little snowstorm we had, so it's about a quarter to a half inch off, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not. In our last presentation, we talked about showing you some of the statewide reservoirs and where we're at. This is a very small, the numbers on this slide are very small, so I've kind of gone in and done a deeper dive. So here's Shasta storage levels, and it's very bleak, actually.
Wow.
You can see the blue line there is last year.
The top one?
The top lighter blue line is last year. The darker blue line is where we sit today. The red line is the 1976, 77 drought. And much like ours, the blue shaded area is average. So Shasta is not doing well. In fact, when we back up a little bit, you can see that it's only at 51% of average. Okay, moving down into Oroville, it's a little bit better at 71% of average, but this flat line right here is a bit alarming.
Yep.
We should still be on an upward trend. Moving down into Folsom Lake, this is an anomaly. So Folsom Lake filled and had to spill for flood control. So they've been dumping water, basically since January.
I thought the Bureau revised their operating plan, so they're not dumping.
Can we
like
say
that
Auburn
early.
Dam? No.
They, they still have to hit the targets, and I would imagine now that they came off of spill, they got down into the control zone, but now there's no more runoff, so they're kind of behind the 8 ball now. So, they are catching up though with, if we back up to that overview, you can see that, Folsom is at 100%. So from here on out, they should be capturing anything that comes in.
Didn't they just spend millions of dollars on a new spillway besides?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on down a little bit closer to NID, we have New Bullard, and, they perform pretty well, actually. You can see where they're at, 668,000 acre feet. Their trend line too is starting to curve towards flat. As I mentioned, it's a combination of a bunch of things, but really it's just dry. Where they sit percent-wise is 96% of average. So it's a mixed bag, it really is. Our area, Folsom, Bullards, even some of NID's reservoirs, especially the lower ones, are in really good shape. Our upper reservoirs, our Jackson, Meadows, and Bowman are really hurting. They need some more help. We're only about 55%. So hopefully that snow melt will help some of that. And when I come back to you at the next board meeting, we'll bring all those forecasts and projections so we can talk through in more detail. Last but not least, as we mentioned, it's one of the driest periods we've ever seen for this time of year, and that is reflected in our treated water use. You can see here the red line depicts our usage January into February, and we used actually 17% more in February of this year than we did in February of last year.
Yeah, boy.
Just attribute that up to it being dry, and people are actually turning on some more. Annual total for the year so far is we've used 6% more than in 2021. Hopefully, get some more rain, and we'll talk to folks about conservation, maybe turn those numbers around.
Hey, Chip.
Go ahead, Ricky. All right.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Some time ago, or a few weeks ago or whatever, you talked about the very long range forecast, which I think exceeds 10 days. Do you still have, or do you receive long range forecasting? And if so, what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I didn't provide it in this. The last time I looked, it was still equal chance, which 50-50 of being wet or dry. The problem we're running into is that we're getting later and later into the season. And so even if we get average, it wouldn't be enough precipitation to really make a huge difference at this point.
It's also warming up too much for any.
Yeah, that's also true.
I wanted to just bring up, and I neglected to, the blue shaded area on the precipitation slide here, the average, obviously. So although we feel like it's spring and summer because the weather's been so doggone nice as far as that goes, you can see we still, on average, get quite a few storms that may or may not help us. But the numbers are really starting to drop into the season we get.
So, April 2nd through the 7th, supposed to have like quarter inch every day. Yeah. Shasta Lake.
Farmers always
there's-
know that stuff.
Yeah. Well,
Watch how many acorns the squirrel gather.
there was 20. Yeah. But Lake Shasta above it, snow's already really bad. It's just not much left to be put in there.
Yeah.
And, yeah. So,
It's fascinating to watch year by year, three sections of California, the differences in precipitation. Very widely.
so
You know, I contend sometimes the storm just comes up Interstate 80.
Yep.
Mhm.
It's small, it's just that narrow band that gets a bunch of water. So,
can we get headlines in the Union, Yuba Net, wherever, billboards? I mean, I was in a town last year and it said, extreme drought, conserve water now.
Mhm.
And we're not getting that message out. Since we went from a 2 to 1, people are, hey, let's throw the water on. And we're not conserving anything right now. And we need that at least 10% conservation, maybe more, to even have somewhat of a normal year.
Yeah.
We'll pick it up, we'll pick up our engagement.
And again, I hope at the next meeting, we can have a more in-depth conversation on the whole thing, see where we're headed.
Yeah, but it should be headlines. I mean, conserve now, or we'll have to go to a deeper drought and with surcharges and mandatory conservation, because that's what we're facing.
Well, and we'll come back, being with a forecast of an absolute worst-case scenario to show you where we will be, given numbers we have currently, and where we'll be 2 weeks from now. And we'll give you those 3 scenarios again, best case, mid case, and worst case.
Okay. So I know somebody bought a new car and next day it hailed on it, but we'll take any kind of precipitation.
Telling me I gotta buy a new car?
Yeah.
Wash it.
You want me to go wash my car? I never do.
I think all of us should wash it daily.
thank you, Chip.
Thank you.
And that's all we had, President.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Board of Directors items, reports. I'd like to go first.
Ricky, will go first.
Go ahead, Ricky. Like I said, I'm not watching the screen.
You
I know,
can
it's
get
okay.
Ruben to help.
I know. Well, Ruben's not here, so I can talk. So this is good. I don't have a lot to report, but I do have one interesting thing that I wanted to advise the board and Jennifer about. And that is about 2 weeks ago, I met with a group of folks, including a different Nevada City Council member, and they are working diligently to find grant funding for a forest clearing project down the Deer Creek Canyon from Nevada City all the way to Wildwood is their very ambitious project. And they're seeking grant funding for that. They have an agreement by, the Sierra Nevada Conservancy to do the grant administration, should they get one. They have an agreement from Sierra Fund to participate. They asked me to come just to listen to their presentation, and eventually they may come to NID and ask us. I told them no money, but support in the way of a letter or so on, and they're actively pursuing these grant funds. So I think it's an exciting opportunity, and I did speak with Rich a little bit about it. I think it's in the development stages. There's nothing active for any of us to do, but they're pursuing it. And so for the next grant cycle that I think starts in April, May, June, they're going to actively go for it. So it's kind of exciting.
And the synergistic effect with our backbone extension program is just great.
There you go, Rich. I knew you would bring that up somehow. That's great.
Gotta have the vision, right? This is vision for watershed health. And
Right, it is a
there's
vision. You bet.
creek that always burns every other year, year over year. And now you have the backbone extension going through Rough and Ready Highway, Rough and Ready Road, maybe into Bithany Springs. So now you got the ridges with fire hydrants.
Be cool.
It works.
Be cool. The other thing that this group has done is they do have some early commitments from many of the largest landowners down that Deer Creek Canyon, because most of that is privately held land. And they're also working with the local Nisenan folks, and because they are also a big landowner there, as well as Bear Yuba Land Trust. So it's an exciting possibility that NID could be included, perhaps. Again, I told them no money, so we'll see how it goes. Anyway, that's my report. I just wanted to let you know that I'm working with them on it.
Thank you, Ricky. To go next.
Oh, okay. Well, went to the Farm Bureau. Interesting. There's generally about 400,000 acres of rice planted every year, with about a little over 6 acre-feet per acre. This year, they're looking at maybe 200,000. Half. Now, Statewide. Now, that's interesting because a lot of AMA guys are drilling deeper wells if they can to go after that groundwater. There's no allocation on a lot of land, so there's no water transfers available. Personally, yesterday I found someone who's going to partner with us to drill a well. So
up in Orland?
Maybe we'll have mandarins. Maybe Reuben will have mandarins next year.
Well, we hope so. He's hoping so too.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Hanson?
Yep.
Richard Holt?
I haven't done too much other than go to Springs, but I did have a chance to meet with Steve Prosser after our last meeting, which was really interesting to hear about Steve's extensive background in city government and planning, and kind of how his career has progressed. And one of the things that he said that I really appreciated was about his background on he was very clear. He's a very strong collaborative person and a problem solver, and he really works toward improving efficiencies in organizations with people at the table. So anyway, I didn't have the opportunity to really talk with Steve prior to this, so I really appreciated learning about his background, leadership experience.
Thank you, Director Holt. Director Peters?
Yeah, I did attend the Placer County Farm Bureau meeting on March 1st, and it was at the annual meeting, so that was useful. And so the Gold Country Media, with the Hemp Hill project on Auburn Ravine, Gold Country Media approached the general manager on February 3rd, and then the whole board again on March 1st, requesting contribution in support of a video that they want to do of the Hemp Hill dam removal project. And throughout the world, these types of projects, we're kind of on the leading edge of doing this type of project. And it's really, from my perspective, an opportunity to really showcase the amazing good work that NID is doing on this ravine. And so far, we haven't approached it or discussed it in a board meeting about what the board's thought is on whether we should support this.
You don't mean Gold Country Media, right? The
Gold Country Media.
Isn't Gold Country Media does the
Auburn Journal.
yeah the
Oh,
Lincoln
not Gold
Messenger.
Country, it's Gold Country.
Yeah, it's a I can't recall what it's called either.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Anyway, so they want to do it, but the problem is that we have policy 1070 that for contributions that's suspended until the reserves are filled. And I thought that the reserves were filled when the worksheets we adopted on December 15th for the budget. It looked like the water, hydro, electric, and recreation, all of the reserves have been filled.
They're not all filled. So there are The water is not, operations is not fully filled.
22 million, wasn't it 22 million?
Yeah, we didn't fully fill the operational reserve, and there was a couple of other ancillary reserves, I just can't recall off the top of my head.
So Yuba Canal.
Yeah, they're not all filled. I don't quite view it as a contribution, I view it more as a purchase, but there wasn't consensus amongst the board, so I just kind of did it. I do believe it's within my authority to do, but I wanted to make sure because of the type of expenditure, we had general consensus, and there really isn't consensus amongst the board, so if the board wants it to come back, we can.
We're supposed to conduct our business in the public.
So there's a policy that authorizes the general manager to make purchases, and I view it more as a purchase than as opposed to distribution.
Why would it be a purchase?
Because we'd actually have rights to utilize the video. Contributions for public agencies are typically not a good idea. They usually result in a gift of public funds, even if it's for a good idea. So I'm not a huge supporter of any type of contribution that it does not have some value that is given back from the district, just from that standpoint. But in this particular situation, we would be allowed to utilize the video as we see fit, as it is our project. So I do view it somewhat differently.
No. Okay, but I just like to let them know what we've decided. We haven't gotten back to them, and they would just like to know.
Yeah, we don't really have consensus. I can reach out, or unless the board wants to, provide different direction. These types of things are always a little bit sensitive, although it's within my authority. I did want to do a little check-in with the board to make sure nobody gets upset about it.
Are you saying that there were hypothetically 2 members opposed and 3 members in favor?
Yeah, there was 2 members in favor, 2 members opposed for 2 totally different reasons, and I don't believe I heard back from one member.
Okay.
You know what? I don't remember even getting back to you, but when I went back and read this, especially in light of us pursuing grant funding, I don't know, it seemed like it would be positive to be able to showcase this as a way in which NID is collaborating and doing some wonderful work for future grants, be it Nevada City or be it whatever that we do. So, maybe we should formalize it and bring it back to the board, actually, because I'm kind of in favor of doing something here, because I think having NID's name as a sponsor or as a whatever is a really good thing, because we have put millions of dollars into this. So I'd like us to get some kind of credit for it. That's my thought.
So I can bring it back if there's consensus on bringing it back.
Yeah.
Like I said before, I do feel that it is within my current authority by policy, but since it has become somewhat of a topic now, we can bring it back. But I just want to check in to see what the status is with their fundraising. Well, they had a fairly large contribution from a developer, so.
But we have editorial discretion.
I don't think we would have editorial discretion. We would request some type of agreement to be signed that does allow us to utilize video for whatever we see.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's a good thing. Take to schools or whatever. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, just couldn't quite get to the 3 head nods.
Right.
Sorry about that. I don't think I nodded. Maybe or did I? Did I say no? Yes? I don't remember.
You said yes.
Well, I did, Don, and I did respond to the email, and my argument opposed was based on the fact that we've spent nearly $5 million on this project already, and somebody else has turned to fund something, okay? I don't disagree that it's a good PR tool to have.
Let's agenda.
Let's put it on the agenda. We're way out there now. We're making the attorney. He's nervous. I can feel the squirming going on.
I appreciate it. I appreciate getting it on the agenda.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Bring it to the agenda.
Amen.
Yeah, good agenda item.
They have to be planning as well.
Okay. That is the conclusion of our business for today. Thank you for joining us, all who joined us on video today, and we will see you, and Ricky.
I'll see you next time live. Okay.
Meeting adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.